Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 229. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, drnorge on the comic forums, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim. Oh my god, we have to talk about Smallville's Isis episode. So said the sensei of the whatnot, Segulin, and the Duke of You-Know.
Oh yeah, we must talk. We must talk about that.
It was funny, you and I actually had a quick conversation on the phone, and you were trying to pull another one of yours on me where it was like, oh yeah, I didn't, I don't know, the episode, I don't know how I felt about it, that type of thing. I didn't even buy into it.
Hey, in all honesty, I gave up on that really quick as well, because I knew I wasn't selling it.
But we're going to talk about that. We're going to have some casual comic chat. A lot of stuff came out over the last 2 weeks, and we're just going to start talking through some of it. A lot of it's going to be very Batman heavy because there's big things going on, a lot of one-shots being released for Batman. I think it'd be interesting to kind of talk about which ones kind of grabbed us and why. Talk about Justice League 50. There's Brightest Day came out. There's a bunch of stuff to discuss. I don't know how much of it we're going to get to, but we're going to definitely look into the show notes to take a look at and see what comics we talked about. We have more interviews and commentary from the New York Comic Con, which we've got at least another episode. We're going to be having those segments as a part of the show as well. Then we're going to be jumping back to listener voicemails. We've been getting a number of listener voicemail calls in. Don't panic. We're going to air all of them, even if we have to do like a bonus voicemail show, which I don't know that we're going to have to do that, but depending on how many voicemails we get. So please feel free to keep calling. And that number actually is 1-440-388-4434 or Dr. Norge on Skype. And definitely consider calling in. We love your commentary on the show. We're with the New York stuff that we're currently airing. That's the reason why we haven't done voicemails the last few episodes. But we will be getting back to them, and we will air every single one of them. So feel free to continue calling with your voicemail commentary. I think it's cool. Our sponsors for this episode are DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. Over at DCBService.com, one of my favorite Vertigo titles right now is Sweet Tooth. You can get Sweet Tooth number 16, written by Jeff Lemire, with art and cover by Jeff Lemire. It's all-out war. Jeopard's army storms the militia gates and all hell breaks loose. But can he control the forces he's set into motion, or will their frenzy destroy Gus before they can even be reunited? The action kicks into high gear, and the world of Sweet Tooth will never be the same. This is a 32-page book, regularly $2.99, 40% off only $1.79. If you haven't picked this book up, it's just a wonderful, charming read. I can't recommend it enough. And that's Sweet Tooth from the Vertigo line. DCBService.com remains your pre-order source, so definitely check out those wonderful savings you can get from DCBService.com. Over on the InStockTrades.com end, I want to give some love to Why the Last Man. This is a series that I really enjoyed, and they're reprinting this in deluxe editions, and I'm going to start getting these, I think, because it's just such a wonderful series and to have it bound and collected. But they just released Volume 4. It's Why the Last Man Deluxe Edition Volume 4. As this deluxe edition collecting issues number 37 to 48 begins, we catch up on the adventures of Yorick's monkey Ampersand, whose biology may hold the key to stopping the male-killing plague, and learn the origin of Yorick's mysterious protector, Agent 355. Meanwhile, Yorick searches for his fiancée in Australia with deadly results before heading off to Japan to learn the shocking truth behind who ordered Ampersand's recent abduction. Regularly $29.99, 37% off, only $18.89. It's a great opportunity to pick up this book for a deal. Remember, orders of $50 or more from InStockTrades.com gives you free shipping. So not only are you getting those great discounts, but you can get free shipping as well. So definitely consider checking out InStockTrades.com for your collected edition needs. Don't forget, you can also check us out at Get Your Geek on Radio. Get Your Geek on Radio, an online radio station committed to making geek chic. And don't forget to check out the Hero Initiative. I always tell people it's heroinitiative.org, and it's the cost of a comic book. If we periodically do the cost of a comic book to help out the Hero Initiative, we're helping those creators from yesterday who have laid the groundwork and the foundations. And honestly, nowadays with collected editions, the enjoyment we experience today, because I keep acting like it's not influencing us today other than the fact that the creators that we are seeing today are the ones that are influenced by them. That's just not true with collected editions, and a lot of creators you're seeing now are coming back to the fold and doing specials, one-shots, writing books again they were before. So it's a great opportunity to really just help out yesterday's creators who really need our support today, and I think it's really a great opportunity. It's heroinitiative.org. Please consider helping them out. I think it's very cool. Jim, what kind of a podcast are we?
The Raging Bullets is a spoiler podcast. Hey Norge, Bruce is back. We go in depth into plotlines and whatnot. Hey Norge, Bruce is back. If you haven't read the books we are reviewing, you may want to come back later on so you can better enjoy the show.
I have to ask, how many times did you practice that? And where?
Multiple times. Yeah, definitely. And this was one that I kept going around with, where how far I was going to go and all that. And yeah.
Oh, I'll answer that for you. It was too far, but. But where did you practice this?
Oh, at my house.
Did you? Were there like folk around or?
Well, probably. I have the windows open, and I got neighbors, so they probably heard me singing. And it's funny. I used to be very conscious and worried about how I sound to my neighbors. But after the New York Comic Con, when I just unloaded with the spoiler warning there, I'm like, hey, whatever.
I used to be very conscious. Does that mean you were unconscious when you were doing it this time? Or?
No, but probably people listening to it are now unconscious.
Let's talk some comics.
Be a good boy, finish your homework, and be in bed by 9. And hey, please tell the big man I said hello.
Jim, as we mentioned at the start of the show, I wanted to talk about, because we haven't talked about Smallville at all this season, and I figured unless we started talking about it casually, it was going to be this long stretch before we got to it. And I don't want to do that. I want to make sure we can start talking freely about this season, because this season, I don't think a single episode so far has missed a beat. But Isis, for me personally, has been my favorite episode so far, because it really delivered a payoff in a way I didn't think they were going where they did at the end. And let's just say what it is. Clark finally reveals to Lois that he's the Blur. We all knew she knew, but he finally reveals it to her, and I thought it wasn't going to happen. They sold this so well.
The way they've been going on with the Blur and should he tell, should he not tell, with her saying should she tell him that she knows his secret, the way they've been going back and forth, I was so worried this thing would go too long. But I got to tell you, this one right here was a great moment, great timing. A couple episodes into the season, you do the big drop, the big atom bomb. Now we get to see where this is going to go on for the rest of the season, because this is just the beginning of the story, just the beginning of their shared knowledge. So yeah, definitely outstanding, and I am loving this season.
It's funny. What I like about the reveal now is that we're going to see some development of their relationship beyond her knowing. Which I didn't know if we were going to get too much of that, if it was going to be like the end episode of the season where we found out, and it's kind of then we're left to, kind of go with whatever our imagination leads to where they're at and where that future segment showed us. But now we get to see a little bit more of her protecting his secret. And I really like that aspect of it. Because what we saw in that future sequence with Brainiac in the previous episode, I thought was outstanding. It was great to see this Lois have an opportunity to really say, what are you doing? What are you doing? You have glasses on.
Yeah, you're glasses. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And then not even missing a beat, but taking out the helicopter pilot because the secret cannot be revealed. I loved those moments. And actually, continuing on that segment, as Clark was saving the helicopter, seeing future Clark in the distance in Superman mode, taking care of some big storm. I mean, it was awesome.
I tell you, with Brainiac, when they brought him back, I gotta admit, I didn't see that coming. Because I try to avoid all spoilers and all that stuff for Smallville. I try to get as little information going into an episode as possible, and I didn't see what was going on with that. I completely shocked when it was the reveal. I was like, yes! I was sitting there cheering and hooping and hollering. It was just, I've had so many of those moments this season, and I gotta tell you, the tender, the romantic moments, just those wonderful, cool little kind of giggle moments I have when they were first that slow dance, and they're slow dancing after it was last week's episode, and and Clark's just hovering slightly above the ground as they're slow dancing. Then just with this scene, when he tells her the secret, and she just turns and runs across the room, jumps into his arms. I thought that was just a great, really just cool scene to see her just completely, Lois Lane, drop all the defenses, all of the walls she puts up around her, just completely drop it and let loose of what she's feeling. I thought those were just two really cool moments for me.
It's always a danger when you let a character be girly on the show. And I don't mean that in an insult. It's just she drops those moments, and you get to see her just be in love with this guy and have those moments. One thing I love about the development of this Lois Lane is she didn't lose any of her strength in that.
No.
I think we've seen her developed as this really strong, really independent character. I'm totally convinced we're not going to see her lose any of that. She's still going to be the same Lois Lane that we've grown to love. And Erica Durance is just doing a great job with this character because of that. It is a fine line when you can take a female character and have her be this vulnerable in that moment. Because the moment with her and Clark there was very vulnerable. She, like you said, she dropped all of her walls and all that. And it's a dangerous move to make with a character that's that strong. But this character's been so well developed on this show that I don't see that being an issue. And it's actually one of the things that I love about the relationship between Lois and Clark. There's great stories going on in the comics right now, showing this woman who is in love with this man, who's married to this man, who is this all-powerful person, but yet showing what she brings to the table and that she has a strength and that she has her own conviction, that while they're both in the path of good, her sense of conviction and her sense of what maybe stories she should be pursuing and where her conviction lies and where her conviction is best used might not always 100% match his. And I love that about her, too. It's that sense of independence. They're not codependent, if that makes sense. There's a nice little energy there of they both bring something to each other, but yet they also have that independence that the two of them have where they are a little different. And there's, unique qualities about Lois. She's not just Superman's wife. She's Lois Lane, reporter. And that's something that I really applaud DC for not losing about that character. I think the best writers on Superman are the ones that know how to showcase that. Mm-hmm. And to do things where we see those moments with her. It's I love what is going on right now with Paul Cornell in Action Comics with what he's writing with this focus on Lex Luthor. I would love to see when Clark gets back into that book and that starts being. I'd love to see more showcases of Lois and what she brings to the table, because I think she's an incredibly interesting character, and I think there's a lot of room to really work with that character and show what her life is like being the wife of Superman, like how she does things day to day, not relating to just him, but her actual job. Mm-hmm. I think that is something like the old series Superman's Girlfriend, Lois Lane, showcase that, but a modern day version of that. I'm not saying go to series with it, but have a story within the story where you get to see Lois in those moments. And I think that would be something kind of cool, like how they spotlighted Lex. I'd love to see an opportunity to do that. I don't know if we'll get to see it, but I would love to see it, because I think she's a character Smallville's shown us how compelling Lois Lane can be as a character. And I think that's something that has been throughout media with this character, throughout her history. I think when the right writers have their hands on her and they know what to do, that character is awesome. Talking about the vulnerability again, jumping back to last week's episode again, it's funny we sort of talk about Isis, but we are jumping back to that Smallville reunion show. When she was there and being the army brat and never having settled in a school for long enough to really develop long-term bonds, but wanting to belong. We all need that sense of belonging. And I loved those moments where you saw it wasn't just even belonging there. She wanted to be the one, like with Clark. When Lana was brought up, she wanted to be the one where they were talking about her and Clark the same way they were talking about Lana and Clark.
Yeah.
I loved the vulnerability in that moment and how Brainiac was basically saying to him, you're missing what's right in front of you. You're so stuck in the past. You're so stuck in your demons of the past that you're missing what's right in front of you. You know what? The arachnid guy coming back was a big swerve for me, because I thought it was going to lead to a throwdown. I thought Clark was going to rescue Lois from him, and we were going to see a moment from the two of them that way. I did not see him coming up and talking to Lois and talking about the impact Clark had on his life and how Clark did, have a positive influence there. And that wasn't Brainiac driven. That was because Clark did have that impact. It was a chance for Clark to see, geez, I really did do some good things. There was something. It actually, in many ways, it complements a little bit what I'm seeing in Grounded with him right now.
Yeah.
It's something that, like, there's an energy going on in the, Superman storytelling right now across media that I'm really digging. because of this. Seeing this kind of impact that Superman has. I think that's what I'm really liking about Grounded is this street level impact where we're seeing Clark actually have interactions with people, and we're seeing potential for change, social change from things that he's doing, and I think that's cool. And we see it with the Arachnid dude. It's a blast from the past from Smallville. But I love that he comes back, and I think for people maybe who haven't been watching, who don't know who the character was, I think that there was a level there where you can just say, okay, this was a guy who perhaps had some powers or something that Clark interacted with, which is what happened. But I loved that. I loved that moment. But Erica Durant's, that vulnerability when Clark was looking at her from the side view when they were at the table, boy, did she act out that sequence well.
Yeah.
Because I was like, my heart was reaching out to her. I was like, oh my gosh, like, dude, if you don't see right now that you need to be acting on this, if this doesn't matter to you, the writers really played this out, because this is a great lead-in episode to Isis. And to where they were at that stage. Such a great build. And I think that's been a key to this season, has been that build. It's funny, with all this dark side stuff going on, it's funny how you would think I'd be looking forward to the big fight between those two. It's been the human moments, the relationship between Clark and Lois that has been the focal for me, and I love them for that. Because I think sometimes in superhero programming, that's lost. And I'm not saying I am excited for Darkseid, and I want to see the development of that, and I want to see the big battle. But I think sometimes you forget to pull back. And Batman Begins, why is that one of my favorite Batman movies? Because of the development of Bruce Wayne. I get to really hang out with Bruce Wayne in that film a lot and get to know him as a well-rounded human being. These episodes of Smallville have been some of my favorites because really get to know Clark and Lois and their relationship in a way that makes sense while you've got these events going on with, the Legion going to the future, and you get to see great Superman moments and all that. Yeah, that's cool, but you also get to know them as people, and I think you need a balance of those type of episodes along with the high-action episodes. Are we getting Lex Luthor back?
I don't know. We get this kid, and if he's going to continue, there's going to be a rapid age growth, is the only way we're going to get quote unquote Lex back. I think they're setting up not for Lex's return. I think we're going to get through the end. This kid is going to be, maybe we'll see glimpses of Lex, but I don't think we're going to get him back by the end of the season.
See, I think we're going to. I think there's too much development going on with the fact that this kid mentally. Because they talked specifically about his mental state and the fact that he has got a mental state well beyond his years, which leads me to believe Lex is actually in there. That's Lex's mind in there. And we're actually going to get Lex back. I don't know. I might be wrong. This is speculating. So, you could be 100% right on what you just said. I'm just throwing out there. I'm watching this and I'm like, oh my gosh, look how fast this kid's aging. And everything that's going, why is Tess so connected with him? It's more than he's just this kid that she's adopted. I think she knows it's Lex.
See, I was thinking the opposite of that. I was thinking she doesn't know it's Lex, but it's one of those things where she wants some redemption for herself for what she's done. And, it's kind of that, she sees this as her chance to do right. And, especially with when it ends where where Ollie and Clark trust her with Watchtower and say, hey, welcome to the team. And you get that emotional response from her. I think all of that is just Tess wants to redeem herself. She wants to, she was a heel. She wants to do her face turn, and she's trying to do that. I honestly think I'm rooting for her to do a full-on face turn. Now, if this kid does turn out to be Lex, and we do get Michael Rosenbaum back for it, I will be hooping and hollering and cheering out loud, especially as much as I'm enjoying Tess. If the old Lex comes back and he does something horrific to her, I would probably love it just because I do have that sixth sense of humor. As much as I'm enjoying the character, I would like to see, Lex come back. And I would like to see this series end with Lois and Clark together and Lex Luthor being back. So it's definitely, one thing I'm saying, but on the other hand, I'm going, I hope this happens. I hope this happens because, and if it doesn't, I'll be happy with the happy ending for him. Or if we get the old Lex back, I'll be happy with that as well.
Here's the one area where, and maybe we're reviewing this differently. When she was crying in the hallway after they gave her the key, basically brought her in and the hoorah moments for Watchtower, I thought that moment was so great because I thought she deserved that. And I love, though, that, they had the discussion. Can we trust her? We'll see. So I like that it wasn't blind loyalty to her. I thought her crying in the hallway was more than just joy that they kind of accepted her in those moments. I think it was also crying because she knows she's keeping a big secret from them. She did not tell them about Lex. And I don't think that's a throwaway. There's a reason she didn't tell them. And I think that's going to be an interesting dilemma. Why isn't she telling them? What does she think's going on? And that's where I'm fully well aware. I'm speculating right now because there's a lot of questions on the table as far as what she thinks going on with this boy. And, ultimately, because, she's no dummy. So if somebody's telling her that this kid's well beyond his years mentally, she has to know that means something.
Well, the only thing I was thinking it could be is Lex built these bodies for repair stuff for him. So maybe he set the kid up so he would have a higher intellect. In case, hey, Lex needs a brain, or Lex needs, another body to jump into, or needs something he would want to have, so maybe this kid, was set to be smart, or maybe that's how smart Lex actually is. I don't know.
I totally agree with you, except the parts are no good if there's nothing in them. The brain is useless if there's nothing in there. What you just said is totally that's totally what I'm thinking right now. What Lex needed a new brain after what Ollie did to him. What if it actually happened?
Yeah, I don't know. That's one of those mysteries we're going to see play out until the end. I think we'll find out the final story on Lex until the end of this episode, the end of this season. I can't see it happening earlier. Now, something that's really kind of
wait, hold on. Before we jump on from that, though, I want to just add one more time. Everything you're saying about him growing parts for himself, I agree with. You and I are seeing that 100% in the same way. I think where I'm going one step further is Lex needed a new body, and this is it. And that's what I'm thinking is going on here. I think we're going to see that he had to have a body regrown, and I think as he's growing into his body, we're going to see him grow into Lex, is what I think is going to happen here. This is playing off a lot of, remember during the Death and Return of Superman, there was the red-haired Lex Luthor that was a clone. It turned out it was actually him. I'm thinking they're going that route with this.
And I'll be honest with you, that's 100% highly probable and possible, and I will enjoy seeing that. Now, it's right now, and that's, I think, probably the strength of this series has been that I see that as a possibility, but I also see the possibility that we may have a happy ending, or I see we may get option C that we don't know yet. And we're not going to know until it plays out. That's something I'm enjoying about this season of Smallville. I really can't sit there and say, oh, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, this is going to happen. I don't know how it's going to play out. There's some certainties we're going to see, Clark in the suit. We're going to see Superman, him have the name Superman, and we're going to see him fly. We know we're going to see that this season, but we don't know when or how it's going to come about. And I think that, for me, is some of the sheer enjoyment I'm getting out of Smallville.
I agree with you that we're going to see a happy ending out of this. Except to me, what the happy ending would be, and I think what fans ultimately want to see, is they want to see Superman flying off into a world where he's going to be defending it from the bads, the big bads. And I think ending this series with Lex in place and Clark and Lex ready to battle it, Clark ready to stand against Lex. Lex is running LexCorp again. And there's a reason with LexCorp, being there with this man in power again. There's a reason for Superman to really take charge. I think that's 100% we're going to see. I don't think he's going to turn out to be the big bad at the end of this. I think there is going to be a happy ending in the sense that he's going to defeat Darkseid, and I think we're going to see that rise to power again of Lex. It's going to be interesting to see what it looks like. And if this Lex remembers Clark's secret.
Yeah, that's the big one. Because if he remembers it, what will happen with everything that Clark's always been afraid of? Will Lex take advantage of that? What are we going to see that way? And I don't know. Now, I tell you, the one thing that has kind of surprised me and caught me off guard is how much I'm not angry, how not angry or how calm I am with the fact that Chloe's not around. she for a long time was, the character that I absolutely loved in this series. And I was like, man, I want Chloe in the real world. I wanted this to be one of the alternate Earths. So this Chloe could somehow make an appearance in the comic and all these different stuff. And she's been gone for multiple episodes now. And I'm okay with the state of the Smallville universe not having Chloe in it. And I think that goes again to show just the writing of Lois and Clark relationship, Ollie's reaction to it, and just everybody's dealing with her not being around, plus the story as to why she's not around. So I'm like really kind of, shocked and awed and, impressed with how much I'm enjoying this.
See, you know what? Here's my take on it, and I agree with you. Amen on what you're saying. But I take it as Chloe is around in the sense that storyline with her is pivotal to what's driving Ollie right now, which I think is incredibly interesting. The Ollie story, because of that situation, the way it played out, is I'm loving what they're doing with him. Touching on what you're saying with the strength of that character of Chloe, there are a lot of characters on this show that could spin off into their own series. And when I say their own series, I mean there could be a Smallville spin-off if they weren't going to follow the adventures of Superman anymore and they were going to do this someplace else, or there was some reason to move these characters on. You could move an Ollie Queen to a Star City and do a Green Arrow series spinning right out of this.
Big time.
And I think there's characters that have been, like Chloe Sullivan, who are so well developed that these characters could carry on and be interesting to follow elsewhere. I don't know that I see that happening. I do see, the creators wanting to probably taking off the success of Smallville, wanting to produce another superhero show. I know we've already heard that there's going to be that they're at least looking at the development of a new Wonder Woman television series. I don't know if that's going to be like the replacement for Smallville, or if that's going to be separate. I'm assuming that might be a separate production thing, but it's really interesting to watch this show right now and keep thinking to myself, but this is it. And I don't think it's funny knowing this is the last season. I don't think that's hit me yet that these episodes, we are counting down till the end of it. Because I think they're giving so much of a high. I mean, this Isis episode was fantastic. They played off of a version of the story where you've got Isis and Osiris and talking about their love. But I loved the little. To me, this is something that Smallville, I think, is nailing. They're Smallvilleizing things, and they're doing their own versions. But the knife of Teth Adam being used in that sequence of events. Tiny details like that, throwing nods to comic fans, I think acknowledging that we're watching this show and that we're behind it, and I think they've really done a very nice job of going to DC Comics and pulling from the mythos when necessary to add a little Easter egg here and there in the show, and I'm a big fan of that. I think it's something, you didn't have to do that. You could have, have it just be the knife of Osiris, which, I mean, there is enough of a nod to, we've got an Osiris in the comics right now, but I just thought it was something, it plays into Carter's history. That type of stuff is something that I really think that they have done very well. I don't mind the continuity differences in this show, like the way that Clark told Lois and the way this all worked out. I have zero issue with the way that it's, because I think thematically it played into, at the core, the emotions and the values of what they bring to each other as a couple. That was never lost in the reveal. I really thought the reveal between the two of them at the end was wonderful because of that. This whole Isis build and having Lois brought in as this goddess and having these moments where Clark really had to fight for his love and make some serious moral judgments there. Where, Isis is asking him, would you destroy a world for her? Would you, who would you kill? Who would you destroy for all this? And him having to take it showed, it was a Superman moment for me, for him to never let go of the fact that he loved Lois with all of his heart, but that he can't be who he is. And that would ultimately destroy them, because look what it did to Isis. Look how jaded she is, how tarnished she is by all of that. And I think that was something that I really loved the way that played out, because I think those moments showed us how strong Clark is now compared to where he was at the beginning of the series. I don't think the Clark that we saw in season 1 would have had that same confrontation with Isis. Not to that level.
Oh, no, definitely. And that's something about Clark that is, this is the Smallville story. This is the Clark Kent story.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's going to end with him becoming Superman, but I think that has always been the strength of this TV show. And I've heard people, complain about, oh, it's going too long, it's taking too slow to build to Superman. For me, that's something I've loved about seeing the man behind the Superman. That's something I enjoyed about the original Superman movies, Superman Returns, the fact that we saw not just a movie about Superman beating up giant robots or beating up some superpowered villain or something. We saw Clark Kent. How was he dealing with everything going on around him? We're seeing Clark Kent here growing up. How is he dealing with what he's become, with his accepting his destiny and becoming, not only that, but how does he deal with the day-to-day problems, the whole, with his relationship with Lois, his dealings now with Kat coming into the picture, his stuff earlier seasons with him and his dad and him and his mom dealing with stuff like that. The human reactions and interactions is what I always loved about Smallville, and so I'm so glad to see that we're still getting those human moments. We're still getting that real person reaction, to all of this. So yeah, this is definitely one of those. I've been riding such a high this season.
You know what? I've loved that this show throughout its 10 years, or 10 seasons, because I think it played out to be 10 years, right? I know with the writer's strike and all that, I don't think we lost any years in the whole thing. I might be wrong. But anyway, from its 10 seasons of this show, one of the things I've loved is it felt like a real time growing up with Clark. We got to hit a certain point of his life at the start of Smallville High and got to grow with him. And gradually, see him to this point where he's an adult now, and he's in that place. My opinion is Clark Kent is Superman. He always has been. I think, there's no mask there. I think that the reporter, when he puts on the with the glasses, and sometimes he's bumbling around and stuff like that, that's the mask. But Superman, when he's flying around, is Clark Kent, and that's who we're seeing in this series. I think it's going to be really interesting to see if we get to see a switch to his civilian identity in this at all. It is one of the areas where with Smallville, I'm like, how can people not know who he is?
Yeah.
And that's one where I've got to suspend my disbelief a little bit and just, recognize that is one of the things with this, the way that Smallville's developed, is that Clark Kent's been so well known that to think a pair of glasses is actually going to work with him. I find it absolutely a blast.
Well, here's one of the things that last week's episode where did the time travel back and he ran into himself, and seeing him dressed in the traditional Clark Kent garb with the glasses and the suit, you know what? He looked like a different person. There was, granted, I could recognize him, and I do. There is still that you have to have a little bit of level of suspension of disbelief. But there was, when I was looking at him, I'm like, yeah, that's working. He's, and he the way he was standing a little bit when the elevator first opened up, and just you could see him doing those slight physical features, modifying how he looks to confuse people.
I think that'll work for me because we haven't seen a heavy use. Perry White knows him though, so that's where it's really going to be interesting. They're not going to have a chance to really explore this much, but this Perry White, if he's flying around as Superman, would know that's Clark, wouldn't he?
I don't know,
because Perry's been at the house. Perry's dated his mom. I mean, there's
But he didn't know the secret because when he was chasing after those Kryptonian symbols, he didn't ask Clark. He was keeping it from Clark. He didn't want to share the information.
But what I'm saying is Clark's not running around in a Superman outfit yet. You put him in a Superman outfit without the glasses on. I'm saying Perry White broke bread with him without the glasses on. Don't get me wrong, it's not a criticism. I think the show is phenomenal. I'm just saying I think the interesting part with the way this show has worked is it does for me. I'm like, the glasses, I don't know that they work so much in the show. And I love the show. And it is one of those things where I'm not saying it as a criticism. I do think, though, it's one of those things. I'm glad the show's ending at this point, because I think I would have a real problem watching a season 11, for example, where for the entire season he's running around in these glasses and nobody's saying, hey,
He looks an awful lot like Superman.
Looks like a lot like you did last year. That's what I'm saying. I guess that's the point that I'm trying to make there. I don't have an issue with it because I think the development of Clark and our getting to know Clark this way was the strength of the series. But it does for me from this perspective, there's no way Perry White, he's not that dumb that he wouldn't know that it was... If Clark walked off the street wearing the glasses and that was all Perry ever saw, I would agree with it. Breaking bread at the Kent farm and dating his mom, he's not going to know. I don't buy it, is what I'm saying.
Well, it could be one of those Commissioner Gordon things where does he really know or does he not know who Batman is kind of deal where maybe Perry does know, but he knows he can't reveal it. He knows why, he can understand why he's got to sit on this story for the safety of others.
Now, in a geeky way, I'd love to see that episode.
Yeah.
Because what you just said, I'm like, now that sounds cool to me. I would like to see that. See, I'm very happy with Smallville continuity being kind of its own continuity. So, if this continued on and we got to see stuff like that, I would, be very cool. And then seeing him pull people out of the bullpen who might know, in the sense that saying, well, if Superman's up and around right now, I kind of got to switch up staff a little bit so that way people don't get to know Clark too well, and there were secrets revealed. So I actually, that kind of stuff, I would be very into seeing. I do consider this very much Elseworlds. It fits to me the tone and theme of everything I love about Superman, and I think it's nailed it on the head. But I definitely consider this show an Elseworlds presentation, and there's nothing negative about that. I love Elseworlds, and I love that about the series. That I think it's done a very nice job of developing its own continuity and sticking to it in a way that I think is interesting. So it's something that worked. It's something that I think about more this season when I do see him in the glasses. I'm like, we've seen a lot of these great characters brought in that have had deep interactions with him as employer, like Perry White, the chief. He would know.
He should know. That's one of those things.
Because I don't consider Perry a moron. Perry is one of the, he's the boss of bosses. He's a newspaper guy. He wouldn't miss that. To me, that would be an insult to the character of Perry White, who I happen to think is just a wonderful character throughout comics history. And it's funny. I love actually watching this show. It's a very geeky discussion. It's because we're going way beyond the show right now because they're never going to go and explore this in a lot of depth. But and it's not a criticism. It's just something that I love watching this show, and I think about all the characters that have appeared on it. I love seeing, I actually am curious if we're going to see Perry and Mom again this season. I'm almost assuming we have to have Mom back, right?
We're going to have them all back by the end. Because the series has to end with Perry being named the editor of the Daily Planet.
Yeah.
And you got to have one more thing with Mom, and the costume and just, I would do some type of, ending where they're all at the Kent farm or something like that. Just one of those, moments of in time kind of deal. I don't know. You need one of those things before this ends. Even at like the ending episode could be them all sitting around the Kent, table breaking bread, and Clark hears something on a police scanner or something like that, then dun 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 dun, goes off kind of deal.
Does Lois cover for him more than we realize? I mean, in the sense that going back to, I guess, my original issue, maybe I'm underselling what Lois is capable of here. Lois is incredibly intelligent on this, and also very crafty, and she's able to cover a lot of times her tracks and things that she's doing, and not afraid to do it. Maybe we're going to see some exploration of the strength of what Lois brings to the table, and the strength of Lois helping him to craft this identity.
And Lois figuring out how to, identifying who may be at risk of knowing the secret and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
And convincing Perry, for example, and making sure that telling Clark how to act in such a way where nobody would ever think I don't know. I'm very curious to see if we get to see. I guess maybe I'm underselling the potential options on what they could do with it. I'm very curious to see if we get any exploration with any of that. This Dark Side storyline, though, is going to be interesting to see where this goes. Because Ollie, I was glad to see Ollie step up into this role where he's really trying to be a positive champion for heroes. but also self-evaluating and realizing that, when Tess is saying that he's being a cartoony version of himself, that it's legit, and how is he going to react to that? What are we going to see different from Ollie moving forward now that we haven't seen before? He was great in Isis, though. It was great to see him and Clark teamed up and how he was bringing something to the table. The teamwork and the trust without the backhanded nature of what we've seen in the past from the two of them. Where they fully trust each other now. The team has come together, and when they pull Tess in, these are two guys right now that I believe are heavy hitters, and they feel like heavy hitters. And I'm glad to see that evolution of their characters. I'd actually like to see some of the other heroes come back and see some of that from them. See that there is some evolution of the team, or maybe a third player. Third
definitely.
hero to be brought in and kind of see this Justice League team brought together. More and more that I watch this show, I just keep thinking to myself, like, boy, you've got characters that are really set up here to jump right into film. Because I really don't want this to end and that be the final word on Smallville. Whether it's TV movies or it's,
big screen, baby.
Yeah.
I so want this, Smallville to be the next Superman movie.
I agree.
I so want that to happen, and just continue on the story. You don't have to worry about, well, if they didn't watch Smallville, they'll be lost. No, they won't be. Everybody knows the basic Superman story. Mm-hmm. They know Clark Kent, Daily Planet reporter, Lois Lane, wife and or girlfriend, depending on time in his life. The only thing you may have issues with would be, with if they bring in Green Arrow or any of the Justice League, people may not know who the Green Arrow is. Okay, they may not know the little nuances that they've loaded, in this series, but they'll get the big picture. They'll get the big story behind it. We can roll this right into the big screen.
Why can't you, though? I mean, let's say you're rolling into the big screen. Let's say you jump ahead a little bit in the timeline. So we basically have moved ourselves away from Smallville, if that makes sense. So we don't have to be, we can use the same actors and they're playing the same roles, but we move them far enough ahead where we don't have to be tied to Smallville, if I'm making any sense there. You've kind of jumped ahead and it's a few years in the future, whatever. You don't even have to acknowledge it. These are just, this is Metropolis now. They've been there for a while. This is what's going on. They could do a quick little origin of Superman if they want to do that. They could throw that in there as well using these characters. Do the same thing for a Green Arrow, if they want to, a quick little origin for that character. I'm not saying that he has to be necessarily in the next Superman film, but I'm saying if they do a Justice League film. Because I think this guy as Green Arrow is fantastic. I'd like to see him continue on.
I would like to see him with the goatee, though. Just because it's the classic Green Arrow look, and especially since this guy he has no secret identity. He's got really no reason that, because that was always the big thing with Green Arrow and Ollie Queen's, secret identity. How can you not know with that big bright yellow goatee that, nobody wears nowadays? And, this one you can explain it, though, because everybody knows his identity. So you could go with that. Part of me would like to see that.
I would, too. I don't know. I mean, it's interesting. I don't think we're going to get them moving on to the films. I really don't.
I don't think so either, but I wish they would.
Yeah, because I really like them. It's funny. It was something, I think it was Raphael, we were chatting, and I apologize if it wasn't, on Facebook about this, and we were both saying just how great it would be for these characters to move on. Because I just think that they really understand the roles. Like Erica Durance as Lois Lane in the films. Like, who else would you go with? I mean, she's great. She really gets the character. And Lois is one of those characters. I don't think she's a hard character to get. Well, yeah, because you know what? She's memorable as Lois Lane. She epitomizes the character. And in Returns, I liked Returns as a film. I'm not going to say that I didn't. But if I get to compare like memorable Lois Lanes, I don't consider Returns a great example of a memorable Lois Lane. So I think there is a comparison to be made there. Whereas I think this Lois Lane's a memorable one. I'll always remember this Lois Lane.
Her and Terry Hatcher are the two Lois Lanes I will always remember.
Margot, you don't put Margot Kidder up there?
Yes and no. I don't know. Part of me there were times when I was a little kid watching Superman, I can remember thinking, why does Superman dig her? I couldn't figure it out as a child. And I've never had those moments with Terry Hatcher or with Erica as Lois Lane. I completely understand why Superman is in love with these two women. and this goes back to when I was a kid. When I look at it now, I see some really cool Lois Lane moments. That strength reporter, that independent person, just Lois Lane seeking out the truth, and just her being Lois kind of stuff. But as a kid, I never saw it, and I never understood why Superman digged her. And I just and I think that kind of those childhood memories I have are corrupting my adult opinion.
I did like her quite a bit as I actually Noel Neill, going back to the old black and whites. I thought she was very good too. I didn't get the love, going back to what you're saying, I didn't get the love vibe there, but I thought she played a very good Lois Lane. It's funny though when I look at her Lois Lane versus like a Margot Kidder's or going on through Terry Hatcher's and stuff like that. The big distinction is it's very much a Lois Lane from that era. She fits what I consider like a Silver Age-ish Lois versus being a more modern day one, so I've got a soft spot for Noel Neill, with the caveat that she feels very much like she's set, like Superman does. That Superman feels very set. Like George Reeves, I thought he was great as Superman. It's very hard for me to compare him though, like to compare him to Christopher Reeve. Just doesn't, or Tom Welling, it just doesn't make any sense to me because it's really a very different type of storytelling in a very different era. I think what he did in that era was fabulous. I think it's just a great example of he was the great Superman for that time.
I got to agree with you on just the assessment of that Superman, that Clark Kent, and that Lois Lane of that time. I tell you, when I said earlier about Margot Kidder, I never had those same type of childhood issues with that Superman and Lois. I could see why Superman digged her. Yeah, I could definitely see why she was digging Superman. The only thing I had issues on that one was I never saw her being in love with Clark Kent. She was only in love with Superman.
Right.
And that was something I always, as a kid, I always noticed going, hey, she likes Superman, but not Clark. And so I never really would put those two together being married or anything like that. But I did see that love and admiration, and I liked her as that Lois Lane. It wasn't until I started reading the comics that I realized just what strong of a female that Lois Lane is, and how who is the quote unquote real Lois Lane.
Where does Dean Cain fall for you on Superman?
Very high on the list. I tell you, I loved Lois and Clark. I thought Dean Cain played a great Superman, a great Clark Kent. He wasn't as bumbly and, kind of klutzy, but he still was a little bit there, so he could protect the Superman identity and the Clark Kent, secret identity kind of deal. Again, that was Lois and Clark was another show that really delved more into the person who wears the costume than actually Superman. So yeah, Dean Cain is right up there. For me, rating, it's tough because it depends on what I just last saw. Since I'm watching Smallville, right. Tom Welling is my, hey, this is how Superman should be. And then I'll go back and I'll watch the classic movies going, oh, no, Christopher Reeves, come on, this is the original Superman. And then someone will throw out Dean Cain, like, oh, I really liked his Superman. So for me, he's up there. I would put, if anyone were to say, hey, guess what, Dean Cain's, again, the new Superman in the new movie, I'd be, hey, that's great. He'll do a great job. There would be no hesitation for me to say that he's got the part.
Okay, Brandon Routh.
You know what? I will put... I was originally going to say, you know what, I'll put maybe Dean above him, but then again, I'm thinking of some of those cool moments where I was like, you know what? He had some of those really cool Clark moments when it was him, Lois, and, Lois's boyfriend, they were there, and they were sitting there looking, and they were just thinking about Superman. They're like, hey, Clark's the same size, the same build, and he's hearing him with the supervision, with the super hearing, and then he does some bumbly thing. Oh God, we're stupid. How could Clark be Superman? Kind of thing, and it completely clears it away. And he just played off that role, just bam, right there. So I was like, so then as I'm saying, I'm about to disrespect him. I'm like, you know what? I can't. That was a good Superman. Now, his strength was, for me, really was his resemblance to Christopher Reeve. So I thought that was a great, just transition-wise, because we didn't have a long time building with him as Superman. I think that's probably why Dean Cain and Tom Welling have I have a strong connection to them, because we saw them, I've seen them for such a long period as Superman. if Brandon Routh were to get the second Superman movie, I probably wouldn't. I'll say I wouldn't. I know I wouldn't have an issue with him having the part, because you know what? Let's see what he can do. Let's give him some time in the not cape and cowl. Give him a time with the big red S and see what happens.
My big thing with that, though, is, and it's funny, I went back and I watched Returns, and as we were going through the discussion, I got to be honest with you, I had to say, oh my gosh, I'm forgetting to mention Brandon Routh, which I think says something.
Yeah.
I liked Returns. I'm not going to go back and sit there and say, we did an episode on it, and I actually stand behind everything we said in there. I enjoyed the movie. I watched it again recently. I enjoyed it again. I will tell you what a big distinction I'm noticing between his Superman and George Reeves, Christopher Reeves, Dean Cain, Tom Welling. Something that I'm finding that is a big distinction is I feel like they were trying too hard to have him be Christopher Reeve. And I wish he'd had more of an opportunity to be Superman himself, to make the role his own, if I'm making any sense. Like when you're saying, would I have an issue of him being Superman again? I would if they're going to keep trying to push him as Christopher Reeve. And I don't know what it is. I just felt like, it was... So I think that was a distinction for me where they were trying so hard to make him Christopher Reeve. It never felt like its own thing. It felt like a sequel to those movies, and I think that's a mistake. I like the movie, so it's not me saying this isn't like something where I'm going, this is Catwoman. Right? I'm not like that with Superman Returns. I liked the movie. I own it. I bought it on DVD. I own it on Blu-ray. And I didn't do that just as a drone. I did it because I'm with you. There's moments in that I really just love, and there's things in there that I think really worked. I do think my major problem with his Superman, and I think the Lois Lane in that as well, is I kept feeling like they were trying too hard to connect with Christopher Reeve and Margot Kidder versus having the chance to make the roles their own. When we talk about what we love about George Reeves and Noel Neill, what works about them? The fact that in that era, they were their own. Like, that Superman, you can't compare him to the other ones. It's completely different. It's got the core values of Superman, but there's major distinctions, in the way that he carries himself and certain things like that, but yet he completely feels like his own Superman, and it works. And when you watch it, you're never once saying to yourself, that's not Superman, he doesn't do that. Lois Lane, it's not Lois Lane. They are those characters, and it works. It actually fundamentally fits. It's the same way of like comparing like the Filmation cartoons with the more modern day versions. It all works, because even though they're different animation. Christopher Reeve wasn't trying to be anybody. He wasn't trying to be George Reeves. He was his own Superman. It's iconic because I don't look at him once when I watch those movies and think George Reeves. It's just not a connection. Dean Cain, the farthest thing from my mind when I watch him as Superman is Christopher Reeve.
Yeah.
And I think that's the strength of that show. Terry Hatcher was not trying to be Margot Kidder. And I think that worked. They got to the core of who those characters are. And they felt very much like their own Lois and Clark, and it worked in that era. You can put that Lois and Clark show in the time, the years that it was on, and say, that really works for that era. Today with Smallville, you don't see Tom Welling is not any of them. He's just so not.
He's his own man. Yeah.
Yes, and yet he feels like Clark Kent to me. It works, and I mean, you could throw him in the suit right now, and I know he wouldn't feel like any of them. It feels like his own man. And I like that aspect of it. It's the one issue with Brandon Routh. I'm like, what is it about him that I don't put him in the same category as him? And it's not a knock on him as an actor or anything. I really think the whole script and the way that the film was shot and the way what they were trying to do with it, I think they were trying too hard to recapture Christopher Reeve's films instead of making their own thing. And I think it was a mistake to make that, because it was meant to be a sequel to Superman 2. And that was a mistake, I think. It's the one thing I think I would be talking differently about this film right now if it wasn't supposed to be a sequel to that. If they really took a chance to take the stylized version that they were doing and let these actors really go that route. And this is me who I'm saying I liked the film. So I'm not knocking. I'm not saying I own it twice, and I'm going to watch it again and again. It's a film that's definitely on my list of films that I like and I enjoy. It doesn't, to me, it doesn't beat Superman and Superman 2. It doesn't fall into that category. Right. I find it an enjoyable Superman film, though. And there's a difference between an enjoyable film and, like, I've got to watch Superman the movie. You know, I mean, which those, I will pick those two before Returns any day of the week. And there's a distinction. And I do think that's the reason why. I don't think Brandon Routh ever had the chance to become his own Superman. So if he did get another opportunity, if it did go that route, I would love him to have the chance to kind of, and I don't know that that's even possible now, because I think he's been so attached to the Christopher Reeve style, if that makes sense. That's not on him again. How do you separate what you saw in one movie with now putting him in like moving in a different direction with him? I just don't see that working with him.
It would never happen.
Right.
Because he unfortunately, he'll never be Superman again, even though he could pull it off just because of that connection. If you see him in the cape, people automatically assume that this is a sequel to the to the last movie. Mm-hmm. And I don't think they'd want to go with that way because, overall, I would say probably it wasn't as successful as they had hoped.
And I'm not saying this is a bad, please don't, anybody listening, I'm not saying Superman Returns is a bad movie. I liked it.
Yeah.
I just don't think that I honestly hope the new direction, and I can't imagine them going back to it, I hope the new direction is just that, a new direction. Or at least pulling from the natural build from Smallville, because I do think Smallville's led to a natural build where it could jump to movies. But I think what we're going to get is something new altogether, and I'm fine with that. So I'm hoping that when they do pull an actor, that they pull somebody, if they're not going to do a Tom Welling and give him a chance to show us his Superman, if they're not going to do that, I hope they pull an actor who they give a real chance to not be any of the past ones. They pick somebody who can really be an identifiable Superman on their own, because I think it works. And
Kevin Smith.
Superman. Wow. I wouldn't even pick him as the voice. I'm a huge Kevin Smith fan.
With Jason Mewes as Jimmy Olsen.
I'd watch that parody. I mean, like, you could do that movie. I think I would watch the parody. Too funny.
Lasers! He's got lasers!
Jim, there's a book. I'm going to be 100% honest with you. I was so caught up in these Bruce Wayne Returns one-shots that have been coming out that it didn't even dawn on me that this week there was going to be a Batman and Robin. Number 15 was coming out. Yep. It just didn't even register. So when I saw that in my stack, I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, I so want to see what's happening in this story. It hit me totally by the wayside, because I figured, it's a skip month. We're not going to be getting any of these books. And this is really, I wanted to see what happened, because we saw Bullet putting Dick Grayson when this was last left off. And I've been saying on the show that I felt in this story, we're going to see Bruce come back. That's going to be what, I'm so glad the way they did this. This issue was such an amazing build for me, because it did it in such a way that I didn't expect. This whole bit with Joker, and I love Grant Morrison's Twisted Joker. I think he really writes a really amazingly cool Joker, and I love his philosophy on the Joker, that all of these different interpretations of the Joker are because he's so erratic, because he's so crazy. He just takes on a different life and a different role every time. He's still uniquely that character of the Joker, but he is free to interpret and move around like this because he's nuts. And I love that aspect of the Joker. I think it totally hits to me what I think at his core makes his character work. And I think it's something I liked about him in The Killing Joke as a character.
Yeah, there's just, you can't say this is the Joker. All of this is the Joker, and that's, the pure chaotic nature of who is and what is the Joker, what he's about. People could sit there and argue for days on end what is the Joker's motivation, and cite different, look at this book, look at this book. Well, right here, we got a pretty good solid explanation as to why we have all of these different Jokers running around, and it makes sense.
With Damian, I really love these moments with him where we're seeing his loyalty to Dick Grayson. This is his partner, and this relationship has been something that Dick Grayson's seen him at his vulnerable stage. He's witnessed that, and yet Damian's grown stronger because of how Dick Grayson handled it. There is a trust that's growing here that Damian, I don't think, is 100% ready to convey, but yet he strongly feels that loyalty, and he's willing to, in these moments, say, hey, whatever we got to do, I need to save him. I am going after my partner here. And this is one of those moments where Damian disobeying orders is 110% what he should do. I think it is a core value of the character of Robin at their best that they would disobey that order.
Yeah.
My favorite Robins are the ones that, I'm sorry, Bruce, you're in trouble here. I am going to step up in these moments. And I think Damian's doing that. And I'm really finding him to be incredibly compelling. These moments where he's talking about coming back and getting the Joker himself, he really means it. Whether or not it's actually going to happen and it's going to play out the way Damian thinks it's going to is one thing, but he genuinely means, and I like that bravery about him, that we know that he's pretty whacked out right now, like he's not 100% at this moment because of the position that he was in, but yet he's still defiant in the face of this bad guy. And stepping toe-to-toe, putting his foot on the throat of the Joker. I mean, there's not a lot of people that are going to do that, hero-wise. And this kid, Damian's doing it.
Damian is just that character that, again, I had Tim Drake and Tim Wayne as my Robin. I'm like, this is a great Robin. And then, you introduce this kid, and at first I was like, ugh. But as time is going on, I'm cheering for this kid. I'm enjoying who he is. This is definitely one of those issues that really just spotlights the strength of Damian as Robin. You start off in the beginning where he's doing whatever it takes to save, Dick. By the end of the issue, you get a great team up with him and Dick where it's a mutual respect kind of deal, and just that Dick is his mentor, and I could very easily see him, very soon say, "No, this is my Batman," and stand up and say, "This is the guy I follow. This is my partner," kind of deal. I can really see this kid have that actual verbal declaration of, "This is who I defend. This is who I support in the cape and cowl."
These moments with the Joker with the banana, when he's slowly peeling this banana as he's talking. It was a great visual moment for me because it's so nonchalant, so casual, that we're watching this guy eat this banana while he's having this huge debate with Damian. It just added to me to the psychotic nature of the character, but yet there is like a calm confidence to him as well that just totally doesn't fit. Like his behavior is totally irrational. And I love that about him, like how it's very interesting to see the Joker doing something that's very calm day to day, and then that he'll flip and do something completely nuts another moment.
Well, and then as that's going on, you see Damian working on to get out of his bonds, and
yes.
He's working to get free, working to get ready, working to change the tables on the Joker, seeing what he needs to do. That was another thing I love seeing this as is going on. Yeah, he's all disoriented, he's been drugged and everything that he's gone through, but he's still focusing on the mission at hand. And again, that's the strength of who Damian is. And I was like, damn, this is really cool seeing this interaction between those two. I really do want to see Damian go after the Joker. I want to see how that plays out. Whether he captures him and doesn't kill him, whether the Joker gets away, what happens. I want to see that one-on-one between these two.
Do you think we'll see it one-on-one, though, or do you think that the partnership is so strong now that we wouldn't necessarily see that?
I don't know. It's you think back to when Tim first put on the when he was having those limited series, those mini-series before he actually had the monthly series, and he went up against the Joker. I thought that was a great, story seeing Tim Drake go up against the Joker. I want to have the same kind of moments between Damian and the Joker, but for different reasons. When Tim was doing it, I wanted to see because Joker had just killed Jason Todd, and there was that whole thing with Joker going after another Robin. And I was looking at for that story, I was looking forward to seeing the Joker go after Tim and then Tim fight off. With this story, I want to see Damian hunt down the Joker. I want to see Damian go on the warpath and just, go into his version of investigation mode, his detective mode kind of deal.
I want to see, if there's a story reason to do that, I kind of want to see it, except that one of the things that I love about this team, and I think this is going to go back to, I think we're going to have to flip-flop between the one-shots as we're kind of chatting about this casually. When Bruce is watching them as the insider in that Batman and Robin one-shot, one of the things I really liked there is Bruce's kind of analysis of them, how they turned this into an adventure. And yet he was trying to decide with himself if he found fault with that or if yet it was something that they should do. And that was something I think was interesting, having Bruce kind of explore that dynamic. And when I say an adventure, I think the two of them, just seeing the energy between them and how they made the Bat combat their own and how their own way of approaching missions and their own style of fighting and dealing with adversaries. I think the growing partnership between the two of them is something I like so much that I don't know how much it fits Damian now to go off alone after the Joker, unless it's, at a point where you're getting revenge and Batman's, meaning Dick Grayson's, out of commission. I don't necessarily see him. I don't know. There's part of that kid that's still there. I should say a lot more than part of that kid. But I think what's making me cautious about that is the new part that we're seeing develop out of him because of his relationship with Dick Grayson. So I'm not totally out of the realm. Like, I'm with you in the sense that is it possible to see that? Sure. But yet there's this part of me that's so fascinated with his loyalty to Dick Grayson and their continuing growth as a partnership that I don't know if he would go that route. But yet I want to see, I'm with you in the sense that I'd like to at least see it on the table to see what he would do. Would he go with Batman or would he go it solo? I don't know.
And it's funny because with that Batman and Robin issue, I liked how as Bruce was watching them, as he was studying, he was like, this isn't a test. I'm just looking at, kind of where he didn't want it to make it sound like he wasn't judging them whether they're worthy of the title, but it was, he's got to see where they're at. And I liked how Bruce realized the adventure aspect of Dick Grayson. That's always been how he was when he was Robin, when he was Nightwing. Now as Batman, he brings that circus act. He brings that performance. Well, he's taking Damian, this trained assassin, and turning him into the adventure side of it. And it's, you could see that shifting over from the doing it for the kill, doing it for, for the training, to over for doing it for a reason. Doing, whether it's the reason is purely your enjoyment, whether it's helping the innocent, whether it's fighting evil, there is that motivation. And Bruce recognizes that, Dick has instilled some of that, that notion, some of that thought into Damian. And I thought that was cool seeing Bruce analyze them and realize what Dick has done for Damian. I thought that was a really cool kind of moment.
Yeah, I think so too. I like this insider identity. And I get what he's doing because he's got this new mission in mind of his. And I think he's just trying to get an analysis of what is the world like since I've moved on. And without my influence, without knowing what I'm trying to do or where I'm going, how do I approach them? And will they even accept where I'm heading in my direction? And, how, because you have to take a look at them and say, where are they at now? And with this new plan I've got, are you taking Batman Incorporated? I guess I don't know what it's going to be. Is it going to be a global thing? Because I don't think it's going to be just Gotham. That's
my opinion, that it's global, that Bruce
so.
is going to go take Batman out of Gotham. He's going to leave. Dick and Damian will have Gotham, and they'll be the defenders and guardians of Gotham. He's going outside of the city, which is interesting because he's always been uncomfortable doing that. But I think we've seen him go through this journey of his, and that's going to be one of the changes in his personality, in who he is, where he's going to be more accepting of stepping outside of the city.
And taking a look at larger global threats that maybe he would have ignored before, because Gotham's in good hands with Dick Grayson. Mm-hmm. He trusts Dick enough to carry on the mission in Gotham. I'm guessing, because we know Dick's staying as the Batman of Gotham. So this is going to be, I'm very curious to see because I don't think I have 100% grasp on what Bruce is going to be up to. We're not supposed to. I actually am looking forward to seeing it laid out, like what is he really trying to do here? But I like this insider thing right now. What do you think? I like his outfit.
I was about to ask you, what do you think of the suit that he's wearing, where it's not just, we got the invisibility, we got heat vision, he's able to tap into the Speed Force, he's got some flight going on. You're the traditional hardcore Batman fan. What do you think of Bruce going with this rig? Well,
remember Night's End? I refer to that story all the time. Remember what he was dressed up as in Night's End? He wore this weird outfit, this different kind of bad outfit when Shiva was kind of putting him through that gauntlet. Mm-hmm. I think this serves a purpose. I love the gadgets and gizmos because it disguises him from those who might right off the bat know him. It adds just a sense of the ways to not be familiar. But I also like the idea as it's going on, especially in like the Red Robin issue, this exploration of building this as an identity to infiltrate the underworld as well. to infiltrate some of these assassins guilds. And, is this going to give me another Matches Malone, for example? So as a traditionalist, it not just being to analyze... I think if it was just to analyze those close to him, I might not be as happy with it. I'm thrilled with it because it's not just that. They've built... he's seen an advantage to turning this into an identity where I can infiltrate, the country for the outsiders. I can infiltrate... this spider guild. I can infiltrate, these different things that he's doing with it, and just how I love that Tim Drake's a part of that.
I was just about to say that. I was just about to throw that out there. That's something that I'm really excited to see Tim and Bruce working together. And it's Tim, I don't know if Tim figures it out first or if Bruce approaches Tim. I think that's what we're going to get in the final issue of the Return of Bruce Wayne, right. Or maybe in that one shot we're going to see. We're going to see the birth of the Insider. And I got a feeling Tim's going to be right there from the beginning. Because, for me, I've said before, Tim's my Robin, but he's also, for me, the guy who is the heir to the cowl. He is this great detective. He is the person who figured out the secret identity. He's earned his Robin stripes, and I love seeing that. Tim is right there with Bruce. He is, his partner, his friend. It's I could actually even see Bruce when Bruce was studying Tim in the Red Robin issue about how seeing how much of Bruce's personality Tim has developed and how much he's grown into being like Bruce, and Bruce is like, I don't know if I like this or not, kind of deal. And I think that is a cool thing.
He even says it. Is he too much like me?
Yeah.
And is he doomed to make the same mistakes I did? And I'm with you that was something that I geeked out about. I like that he talks about each of his children, as are they doomed in their own ways to make some of the same mistakes that I have? Have I given them enough and yet allowed them to be their own individuals enough? And it's interesting to see him look at it this way. I like seeing him come back in this role as he feels a little older. There's something about this that this experience has changed him. And I like that exploration. I'm hoping that's something that continues as this moves forward. I can't imagine it not, with them giving him such a new role. And that was something that I think is interesting when you can take a character as long-lived as Bruce Wayne and you can move him forward while keeping him Batman. That's something that I'm finding fascinating, is that I'm excited to see him come back. When he's dressed up as the Insider, I still firmly feel he's Batman. It works for me because of the internal dialogue and the way he's analyzing the situation and playing it out. It just all works. I liked the outfit a great deal. I thought it was a great move. I loved how it developed into its own identity, and there was it was a multi-layered use of the identity for him, which I think is just fabulous.
And he's still getting used to it, even though, because there's been, I don't remember which one of the road homes it was. He was talking about when he landed, there was no cape to fan out because he uses that as a dramatic entrance kind of point. The Insider doesn't have those drama points. Doesn't have that the horned cowl, which kind of it looks a little demonish, looks a little bit supernatural, freaky to strike fear in the hearts of criminals. It's a different MO, so he's got to adjust and he's got to get a little bit of a used to it as well. I thought seeing that was a cool aspect of Bruce Wayne.
Now it's interesting as I want to go back to Batman and Robin real quick. Dr. Hurt seems to be just in total control. He's shot Dick Grayson in the head, putting Damian in a position where you've got to choose now. I got a bullet in his head that's going to kill him. It's right on the edge of things. This kids could kill him. On the other hand, you could join me. You could help me here and help me achieve my goals, and hopefully that will give us a chance to save him. Is I guess where he's going with this whole thing. Mm-hmm. But I loved the build because I'm like, there's no way this is going to play out the way Dr. Hurt thinks, because he's going for this thing in the basement, and I don't know if you felt it. I think it was done intentionally by the author. It's not something I'm saying I'm brilliant or anything. This is when I started feeling Bruce is like, where's the pages? He's coming.
He's back.
There's the build here. I'm like, this is where it's totally going to this. They've set up this situation. I loved, though, that and here's where they did swerve me, that Dick Grayson knew. Like, this was all a plan that was in place. When Dick Grayson was shot in the back of the head, he knew Bruce was there. And this was all leading to these moments with Dr. Hurt that they're finally pulling one on him, letting Dr. Hurt go to this sanctuary where he's grabbing this box that we've seen traveling throughout history to open it up, only to find out gotcha. And then Dick Grayson and Robin are on top of him, and when he goes to spin around, there's Batman waiting right there. And it was, whoa, such a powerful presentation of those moments, and how this Dr. Hurt, who has throughout centuries, or at least how old do you think this Dr. Hurt is? Hundreds of years at least, right? Beyond, because he was back during that. Wasn't he in that issue with the Puritan? The last time Fraser Irving?
Yeah, I think so.
I think he was there.
That was him,
right?
So that's where he gained. I don't know if he gained immortality there, or if it's something that needs to be recharged. Because in the one return issue, we see him doing that whole ritual that we talked about before,
right.
But he really didn't care when it went bad. So, does he have immortality, or is there something else? I don't know. It's one of those things where 1 second I say, yes, he's got immortality, he's got the Ra's al Ghul thing going, this is that same guy, and then on the other side of me I'm like, what if it's not? What if it's just somebody who's a little touched in the head, who stumbled on these secrets and these clues and took it on as his own personal persona?
I totally think it's the same guy. I don't think there's any chance it can't be. I think this is the guy from that time, and I think that Bruce started to figure out he was coming along on the journey. Like, I think Bruce remembers that he was almost sacrificed by this guy. I know he remembers R.I.P. now, but I think the math's all been put together. He knows what this guy's end game is. He knows his family didn't do any of the things this guy said. He knows what he was up to. And I think the problem that Dr. Hurt's going to find out is you got a guy who just traveled through time that had an opportunity, because he traveled through time, to put things in place to stop you. So I think we're going to see just a whole end game play out here where Bruce, through coming back the way that he did, was able to completely one-up Dr. Hurt.
Yeah.
And we're going to see him reclaim everything now.
One of my favorite scenes from Batman and Robin was the fact that, the way Dick let, Damian know. Remember who he's going up against. Stahl. And I was like, oh my God. That for me was just that cool notion that Dick had so much faith in Bruce that there's a plan already laid out. I thought that was a cool moment for me.
Talk about lettering. I want to compliment on this and the balloons. And I don't know who's, if the letter is responsible for the balloons or how this works out, but this moment with "Turn around, Doctor. It's all over." I mean, it's a complete shift, because that's not the Dick Grayson Batman. That's not the way he approaches it. Yes, he used intimidation. Not the same way Bruce did. I actually really like the distinction in the Dick Grayson Batman. I like that when in the one-shots Bruce was analyzing, it was more of an adventure aspect to it. I think this is proven to me, because I think the Dick Grayson Batman has become so much of its own entity, that there is room for a different style of Batman in the DC Universe that just seems to work really well. And I really enjoyed that about the one-shot. Can we talk a little bit about the Catwoman one-shot?
Oh, yes.
Huge fan of Catwoman. Going back to my childhood, I loved the little the banter between the two of them on the 60s Batman show. But throughout the history of reading them in the 70s, straight on through the present day, I was a fan of the Earth 2 Batman, who married her and had the child Huntress. So to kind of see this option, I'm going to say in those moments, I'd love to see a potential possibility where maybe now this new Bruce could move forward. Could we now, with having Dick Grayson in as kind of this more the younger Batman, and Bruce taking on this different role, could we have a possibility of Bruce actually moving forward? I don't know that I necessarily want to see that right away, but I love those moments with her. And even if we never see it, like, we're going to go back to Bruce kind of using the billionaire playboy thing, and that's going to be a part of all this. So let's say they do that, go that route again. I love that in that moment when he was with Selina, and the whole thing talking all the way through about your heart, and what this person means to you, and he's talking about internally, is she a beacon for me to come back? Was she part of the reason why I'm here? That part of him that admits that connection to her, and the part of her that admits that connection to him when she drops off the mask at the end. I mean, throughout the whole story, there were just such wonderful moments with that. And I love that he picked her to help him out. And it was an assessment of her, sure, but yet what she was doing was something he needed her to do as well, and he knew that he could trust that it would actually get done. It was such an interesting little twist there, and the way that it all worked out. I loved their relationship that way. Do you think the two of them in this version could ever wind up together? Like, actually having a future together?
See, here's the thing. When we were at New York, one of the questions that kept coming up at the different panels was, when Bruce comes back, are we going to see anything possible between him and Wonder Woman? Because they had that whole Through the Blackest Night thing where there was that, is there something more? Is there a future of something more kind of deal? And whenever somebody would ask that question, half a dozen, hundreds, I don't know the number, but you would hear this outcry, no, we want Selina. And there was always this huge debate that kept going on about Selina or Wonder Woman or Silver St. Cloud or whoever you're going to throw Bruce with. And I actually was on the kind of the side where I'd like to see Wonder Woman and Bruce together. I always thought that'd be a cool, meshing of the
Read
two.
JLA.
What?
Read JLA for that in Morrison's run. It's already been explored.
Yeah.
They've done that before.
I haven't read that. I'd like to, and I'd like to see that. But it was this issue here that completely got me to flip sides, because I love seeing Bruce. It was part of an assessment on her, but it was also an assessment of himself. He was looking inward while he was looking at her. He was going through, and you see it at that end when he basically chooses to pretty much reveal it's him without actually revealing it, when he goes through that whole, next time it'll be a stolen heart kind of deal. And she's like, Bruce? And she, he had her completely fooled throughout that. He could have walked away and still remained the insider, but he gave her that piece. He let her know, hey, it's me, I'm back, kind of deal. And I thought that for me was just a cool moment, seeing him, accept that she does have a place in his life. And I really do want to see her there. I want to see where this goes. I have no idea what'll happen to Sirens if there's something more between them, because I do like her, Ivy and Harley together. I think that's a great series, but I want to see this get explored. I want to see this going forward, seeing Bruce and Selina, something going on there.
Yeah, I don't think that has to mean the end of Sirens when they do it, or however they do it. I think that I think he's seeing that there's a reason for what she's doing, and she knows what she's doing. I actually like her as being independent, and I think that's something whatever they do with the two of them, I think she works the best. Like what worked with her in Hush with him? She was independent still. She was an independent thinker. You got to see that strength of her. I don't think the independent Selina would dump her friends and Sirens to be with Bruce. I think that Bruce and her would have to come to a compromise as far as how they accepted each other in their lives and how that worked. That's always been my favorite aspect of Batman with her, has been when, especially in later years, where we got to see that she became a respected confidant. And it wasn't her trying to redeem herself to him always. It was her recognizing that she had her own agenda, her own way of, her own code, if it would, if it makes any sense. I don't know. It's interesting to see, where they end up going with this. I'm not of the. I won't be mad if they don't go there with them. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I'll go back to touch on what you said. I think the Wonder Woman thing is a lot more throwaway than people think. I think that was Wonder Woman showing that this is her dead friend who there probably were some feelings for. I think if Superman had been dead, we would have seen something similar. I don't feel like that we're holding that, Bruce is the one for her kind of thing. But I wouldn't mind if they do explore some kind of romance between the two of them, even though they've done it before. It's just that my preference would be Selina, just to see that. I don't know if Bruce is going to have time for this with Batman Inc., though. How much is he going to be doing? And is he going to have time to explore a serious relationship, or are we going to see the jet-setting playboy? I don't know. I don't know where this is going to go. I'm open to a lot of different possibilities. This issue, though, and I think that's a key to any issue what you're doing with Batman and Catwoman, especially in these moments, They did this with the Commissioner Gordon issue as well. There are a short list of people in Batman's life where if you're going to bring Bruce Wayne back, you've got to show those special moments. I'm waiting for the Oracle one because she fits into that category. But I thought what they did with Commissioner Gordon and what they did with Selina was absolutely brilliant. Commissioner Gordon was a different way of handling it. I love at the end that it was Commissioner Gordon. You knew at the end, even though it was never really vocalized, there was enough at the end that you knew he knows that it's him.
Oh, yeah, big time. And there's no doubt whatsoever in my mind that Gordon doesn't know that the Insider is the Batman.
Right.
Yeah, and I tell you, it was the inner moments of Gordon where he's standing up on his own and he's not just the flunky who doesn't know what he's doing without a cape vigilante there to help him out. I love seeing this great cop that is Gordon, and when we have really just a good handle on who he is, why he is, the commissioner of a city like Gotham. Gotham, you can't, be just a normal everyday guy. You've got to be a step above. You've got to, knuckle up, and you got to do a little bit different than anywhere else because this is Gotham. A city like Metropolis, you need that same kind of deal. You need these special people to be in these positions, or they won't last, or things will just go to, make it would be go from a bad situation to, be an impossible situation overnight if it wasn't for the strength of someone like Gordon there. And I love every time we see that, every time we get a recognition that the Gotham PD does have a harder job than anywhere else would have just because of the nature of Gotham City. I love seeing those stories.
I love seeing Gordon through Bruce's eyes. I've always loved that. And I think it was something that was really handled well in that one shot, was seeing that him admit that, I've always said that Gotham is my city, but acknowledging that it's Gordon's city. And I'm not even saying that he is completely giving up his role in it or anything like that. I don't mean it that way. But showing the nod of respect to what this man has devoted his life to. And the fact that he's still around in some way because the two of them have that energy together. You know what I mean? That it could be in many ways Bruce's being there in that partnership that is keeping Gordon going and how Gordon keeps him going. I loved that admission that there is something to this man that is, and there's an energy between the two of them that keeps them going. My favorite Batman stories are the ones where I've felt that between the two of them. And that was the one shot I was looking very, very forward to out of the batch, just because I'm a sucker for Jim Gordon moments. And I love that majority of the focus was on Jim Gordon and what he brings to the table versus it being Batman saving Jim Gordon, if that makes sense. I liked seeing Jim Gordon take that role, seeing the good cop, seeing the man, who actually, it made me respect the character of Jim Gordon even more, echoing totally what you were saying about him and just how well that character was handled in that. Stephanie Brown?
Yeah, oh my God, Batgirl. I tell you, I really dig this. Was another all of these road homes. You're going to hear me say I really dig this because this is something that these were great interconnections. A lot of times it's a completely different creative team working on it, but you can really see strength of editorial team, strength of the overall story that they're trying to tell. It's Bruce in every single one of these issues is still Bruce. There was never a time when I'm sitting there going, I don't know about that. No, these were just those great interactions and interactions I wanted to see, and especially with him and Stephanie. I think that was just some cool moments of his not only accepting her, but her saying, yes, this is who I am. She gets that chance to tell Bruce, hey, I am Batgirl kind of deal. I thought that was a cool moment.
I love that he wanted to hear it.
Yeah.
Like that was something for him, like he needed that validation from it. And it was almost like a nod, to her saying, hey, just tell me it. I want to hear it. Tell me it. Let me feel the conviction. Let me feel there's something about it. I'm really glad Brian Q. Miller got a chance to write that one shot because it felt to me a part of the overall Batgirl series in the way that it was written. And I thought it was a very good one shot. And it's, again, the strength to me of that Batgirl series right now. I talk about the adventure aspect of the current Batman and Robin. Talk about fun. Batgirl is fun. And a lot of times I think fun is one of those words that when we use it, it somehow is diminishing. It's just the opposite with that series. It's got all the serious tone and nature that you would expect with it. You've got a teenager who really is working hard to fit into that role, takes what she does very seriously, yet there is some humor to it. And it's never too far. It remains like it reminds me of what I like about. I'm going to throw out here, and I don't. This is in cookie cutter. Spider-Man is a word that I use. Blue Beetle, series like that. These are characters that are fun. They're accessible, yet it's serious. They're good stories and great supporting cast. And I love what's going on with Wendy and how Oracle makes appearances, and it's Stephanie making good use of using resource information to make herself more effective, and yet there being qualities that are uniquely Stephanie that make her survive in the field. It's not all what can I get from the outside to help me. It's what do I bring to the table that can help me. And I think that's really important to making her a believable Batgirl. If we don't believe that Stephanie has unique qualities that make her interesting and valid as a Batgirl, that she really adds something to the fight, she brings something to the table, she's going to look at it a unique way, and she is a survivor and she's capable of doing it, even though she might not be able to go toe-to-toe with these villains on the exact same level as a Dick Grayson or a Tim Drake or a Bruce Wayne. But we've even seen Tim notice that her fighting has improved, that she's got a style that will surprise him at times. Those are things that I'm really digging about the character. I loved Cassandra Cain. I love Stephanie Brown as Batgirl, and I honestly was one of the advocates that I want to see something done. I'm glad we're going to see Cassandra Cain and that there is a purpose here for her. I love the nod to that she's not gone, that we're going to see something with her, but I do not want to see her back as Batgirl. I want to see Stephanie Brown as Batgirl.
Yeah, Stephanie Brown is Batgirl to me. And this sequence when she's, infiltrating the hideout and she's not in garb, she doesn't have her full utility belt. It's basically her. She's got the one, collapsible staff and that's it. And she's got a room full of guys that she's throwing down with. And Bruce is just invisible watching her go. And I love just the dialogue, Stephanie's always been able to hold her own in a fight, mostly. And I may have been wrong about the showboating. In an odd way, it suits her style. It's all part of her dance. There's a pattern hidden in the chaos. And I love just as they're doing this Bruce inner dialogue, putting in the diary, you see her going through and bam, 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 just hop back and forth. It's, you said Spider-Man. I think what people talked about with Dick Grayson when he was Robin had that same acrobatic type of entertainment style. She's definitely got that same type of, vibe, for me.
Did you read her as Robin?
Yeah. I read the the Robins where she appeared in Robin as Robin.
But did you read her in the Bat books as Robin?
No, I don't think I have those. I don't think I went back that far.
That feels so much to be a prelude to this. There's a definite evolution of who she was then, but the energy that she brought to the table as Robin for her brief tenure as Robin when she was filling in for Tim. Before Tim retook the mantle, because Bruce used her to get Tim back. I think during those bits, you see the girl who could become Batgirl.
Yeah.
And very much she's matured and she's become a totally different character, but yet that person's still there. And it's a great consistency with her character, being able to look back and see certain stories of hers that do lead to this. And I'm glad to see her in this role and back in there. I am, and I do want to actually say one thing though. I am a fan of Cassandra Cain. I loved her as Batgirl. I just think the era has changed now. I want to see where Cassandra Cain goes from here. I'm not saying let's be done with Cassandra Cain. I don't want to see Cassandra Cain as Batgirl, but I do want to see Cassandra Cain. There's a huge distinction there. So I don't want people to be saying, Sean, you're a Bat fan, you don't want to see Cassandra Cain. No, I love Cassandra Cain. I just feel that this role now is Stephanie Brown's. The same way I feel that Damian's Robin.
Yeah.
And I love Tim Drake. I don't
want to see Tim go back to being Robin. I like him as Red Robin. Mm-hmm. I want him to stay that way. And I love Tim as Robin. I always said, hey, that's my Robin. Well, guess what? I've now shifted because I'm seeing the character evolve. I'm seeing him the evolution of Tim Drake, and I'm seeing Damian jump into the role. I'm like, Damian fits. Damian is a good Robin with Dick Grayson. I think that's a good combo of those two. And just like with Stephanie, she is Batgirl to me. I love seeing this, and the funny moments, the entertaining moments, just those little parts in it that I do chuckle when I read Batgirl. A lot of times because she does those one-liners. But even just a deadpan play that Bruce did as she's leaving, the one bad guy's getting up with the gun, and you just see the bam, the quick pop as he lifts up his hand, knocks the dude out while he's still invisible. I think I was just kind of chuckling there.
And that was something that was interesting, too, because it was clear at that moment, like he could have revealed himself there and berated her, which he would have done in the past. So it shows Bruce's advancing in maturity and understanding the need for his allies a little bit more, which has me interested in Batman Incorporated even more. I know Morrison didn't write these, but obviously, thematically, they've got to be saying, hey, here's where we're going with this character of Bruce Wayne. So this is elements that you want to see there. And his interactions with everybody show a willingness to really see people for who they are and their strengths and what they bring to the table versus criticisms. Like, this is not a very cynical Batman, and I like it because it really feels like he's trying to embrace his extended family in a way that we haven't seen from him. We've seen him do it, but not, I think, on the level that we're going to see from here. It has me excited of seeing Bruce Wayne evolve. This was something that I hoped for. On the show, we talked about who stays, Dick Grayson or Bruce Wayne. And I kept saying, I want Bruce back because I want to see him react to this world. I want to see him evolve due to this world. I want to see him step in a new direction as Batman. And I'm getting that. And totally didn't expect that I would want to see Dick Grayson stay as Batman because of it. But I think these one-shots solidified for me even more that I want to see Bruce continue on as Batman in a new capacity, having that go further, evolve Batman, evolve him as Batman, and seeing Dick Grayson stay, because that's working so well, which I totally didn't expect at the end of this to be saying. They really did a great job of pulling me into it.
Yeah, and I love the fact that Alfred was sticking up for Stephanie and all that, and just the entire Bat family is sticking up for her. I think that is a cool thing to see as well.
And Bruce giving the nod that Alfred sticking up for her means a lot to him. Mm-hmm. That nod of respect to her is something that he notices and values. I thought that was a great moment, because he really acknowledged that with Alfred. And that, to me, those nods to Alfred, I like seeing when we see Bruce acknowledge that Alfred's counsel, he's not a butler, he's not just a butler. He is a counsel, he is a confidant, he is a respected, trusted ally and friend. And if Alfred's giving her a nod, he's perking up and taking notice. He already was, but that Alfred nod I think I totally further solidified what Bruce already had going on in his head. Like, he was already where Alfred was, but Alfred was the exclamation point. And that was just a great moment I am so geeking out right now. I was worried that, like, when these one-shots were coming out, that I was going to be sitting here saying, oh, man, we're getting too much stuff going on, and it's going to be, way too much Batman and all that. And for me, I think with Bruce having been gone from the universe for so long, it was so much a delivery of, I really want to be inundated with how he's here. I want to feel like I'm traveling around with Bruce real time. And that's what it felt like for me. I'm actually curious, for those of you who are out there and are Dick Grayson Batman fans, did you pick up the one-shots? And did you have that same experience? And are some of you going to be, and this is actually something, are some of you who are Dick Grayson Batman fans only going to be picking up the Dick Grayson Batman books, or are you going to pick up all of them? Yeah, I'm curious to see how people play out on that. Because I do think that that's an option that they've given their readers now to say, hey, you new fans who are Dick Grayson Batman fans, we're doing Dick Grayson Batman stories, and you can just follow them. They're right here. But yet we've got Bruce Wayne stories for the Bruce Wayne fans, and then for people who like both, like myself, you're going to be able to enjoy all of them. Do you think, Jim, are you still afraid it's too many Batman books? Because you mentioned that previously, but now that this is playing out, do you still see it that way?
No. Well, yeah, I don't see it that way, but there still is a fear that there will be that perception. I think just because of the sheer number of books, even though each one's got a little bit different feel to its own little story, I still can see people just looking at the number of books saying, I can't get all those books, or I'm only going to get these books. I'm only going to get the Bruce Wayne Batman books. I'm only going to get the Dick Grayson Batman books. I'm only going to get Batman and Detective Comics because I have multiple years worth of that, and I'm going to keep the run going. I see that still happening, even though for me personally, it's not too many books. I see what they're doing with it, how they're breaking down the universe. This is a very large team, if you will, that is the Bat family, and this is a good way to kind of spread out the family. It's it's one of those things where you look at like a team book that has a lot of members, and you're like, how can you get the story within all of them? Well, this is what they've done with this Bat family. They're going with the different individual titles, the different kind of feel and thematics behind who the characters and how they're going to deal with it. So I personally do not think it's too many titles, but I still can see people thinking that. And
I don't think you have to read all of them, though.
No.
By any stretch. I think, like, if you're a Dick Grayson fan, you're going to be getting complete stories in those Dick Grayson Batman books. Because I don't see this way with Batman Inc., I think with what Bruce is going to be doing, that's going to be contained in Morrison's book. I mean, I think that's really going to be where we're going to be seeing that carried out. I think we're going to see echoes of it appear in other books. Like, I know we're going to have something in Azrael, but I don't think you need to be reading any of the other stuff in order to enjoy that Azrael mode. I think it's going to be how is Azrael reacting to it. Kind of like what Gale did with Secret Six, for example, where we had that one-off issue that had Bane and Catman.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're going to see that in Azrael, because I know there is an issue coming up that was solicited with Azrael where it's going to touch on Batman Inc., but I don't think you have to be reading Batman Inc. I think you're going to see a different perspective of it if you are, but I don't think you have to be. And I think, similar to what we were talking about over this year, Batman, when Tony Daniel was writing it, you didn't have to be reading Batman and Robin to read that series.
Right, they were two different entities, yeah.
And I think we're going to be seeing that with these Batman books, where you can pick the ones that you want to read. We're going to do cover-to-covers of each of the Batman books that are released next month, because next month is the kickoff of this.
Yeah.
So we thought it would be fun to kind of go back to... We're not going to be able to do every title in the DC Universe like we did back when we started the show, because we cover them in a way that's differently. But we're going to do cover-to-cover and kind of focus on what we did at the beginning of this Batman and Robin type of thing, but do it a little bit more all-encompassing of the Bat books to talk about, between the two of us, which books we're enjoying the most, because we were very different. You liked the main Batman book more. I liked Batman and Robin more out of the two. And I'd be curious to see which ones out of all the titles, are we going to both agree on which Batman we're enjoying more? Because there's going to be two guys in the cowl, and then within their books, which Bruce book is our favorite, which Dick Grayson book is our favorite. I think there's a lot of discussion to break down between, do you like Dick more? Do I like Dick more? I mean, I might like Dick Grayson more when I see this all play out than Bruce now coming back, having them to compare, or I might be the other way and just be saying, wow, I'm in cloud nine with both of them. I don't know. I'm going to be curious to have that discussion, and we'll take a look at things like Batwoman, Batgirl. Are you thinking we should look at those too?
Oh, of course. I say we look at the full Bat family.
The Bat line.
Yeah, let's check them all out. Let's go in depth into some Bat stuff.
Okay, and confidential. And you can borrow mine.
I'll borrow yours for that.
Because I want to talk about confidential, like confidential.
Oh, okay.
Well, it's the 50th that's coming up, so I'll let you borrow the 50th issue.
Oh, okay, cool.
We can go that route with it. But I definitely think we need to explore the Bat line. One book we haven't talked about yet, Jim, and I actually want to make sure we talk about this one of the one-shots that have been released so far, Outsiders.
Yes.
Mike W. Barr did the writing, which he was the writer on the old Outsiders series. So it's great to see him return to for me, it was great to see him return to the book. It was interesting to see Bruce come in. We're seeing him in Ryan's country, Markovia, taking a look at everything that's happened with the Outsiders team. Is this team able to be a part of what he's doing with Batman Incorporated? Does he need to step in and interfere with what's going on with them? Which I thought was an interesting commentary as well. I loved seeing how this all played out. How he set up a rumor of an assassination attempt, and it went wrong. Because there was discord there, and somebody else was getting blamed for the potential assassination attempt that he was going to do. And how he had to deal with that. The responsibility of laying this plan out, and how another civilian was brought into the whole scenario. So I thought that was a very interesting dilemma that Bruce was put into at that time.
Yeah, I'm with Outsiders. I am really curious to see where this goes. And I've been, as I said, Outsiders was kind of on my chopping block. I was looking at maybe getting rid of it because of just the turmoil and everything going on. I'm like, do I really need it? Then we had that great issue that had the Creeper issue that I was like, oh man, I got to see where this plays out. And then this issue came along, and I was like, again, I'm seeing what could be really cool usages of these characters, and how would they play into Bruce's plan? Would there be still outsiders associated and connected with the master plan that Bruce Wayne has? And I like seeing this. I like this concept. I want them to still be around, but I like the fact that as Bruce is analyzing this stuff, he's realizing it's not at the place I need it to be. There's definitely going to be some stuff going on. We have to figure out how to get them to where it is. And for me, I say Black Lightning is the key. And that's something they talked about at the different panels, because the Dio was asked about it, and they said there's going to be some strife, some family strife, some inner turmoil still going on until the Outsiders gets everything cleared up. And we're going to see Black Lightning's Outsiders versus Geoforce's Outsiders, and we're going to see how this plays out in the end. And that's something, with seeing Bruce study them, knowing that we're going to get something like that coming down the line, really has me kind of interested and curious about Outsiders, that it's now off the block. There's no way I could cut this. I got to see how this story plays out. And I think that is a strength of this one shot, in that it continued to feed that same kind of curiosity I had with the regular monthly book. So I'm like, okay, now I got another part that I got to see play out.
My wish list for the end of 2010 and throughout the early part of 2011 is more of these teams building towards cohesive units, coming back together. I think one of the big problems I've had with team books at DC, I've been enjoying them, but why we don't talk about as many of them on the show as we used to? Too many of them are in turmoil.
Yeah.
I like shakeups. I'm not against shakeups. Sometimes it's fun to shake the team up, get new members on the team, and that type of thing. The big problem we had for a while there with a lot of DC's teams has been a lot of shakeups that never paid off. Where we got to see the team come back together. Like, typically when you do a shakeup, what's supposed to happen is then, after the shakeup, we see somebody take the lead and pull the team back together again. Why am I enjoying Justice League right now? Because we're seeing a team come together and becoming stronger and stronger and stronger, and going forward as a cohesive unit. And we're seeing that continual build. Teen Titans, why am I excited for what J.T. Cruel and Nicholas Scott are going to do? Well, they're going to pull the Titans together, and we're going to have a Titans team that feels like a Titans team. And it's how many more issues can we see of the Titans being unsure of themselves? I mean, their team, Titans, one of the things I love about the Titans is how well you can beat them up. But the great thing about them is the Titans pick themselves back up again. And I'm really excited to see big stories with them. Sure, are they going to have strife and they're going to have rough things? The Titans, they take a licking and keep on ticking. That's half the trick of the Titans, and they go through emotions and heavy turmoil. But there are those moments where we see them be heroes. And I think we've been slowly building with them back in that direction. I think it's been working. But I'm ready, I want to feel like the Titans are like, wow, the Titans again, Titans together, like you're one of your favorite things to say. But I grew up with the Titans before you and I even met, and to see, I want that Titans back. I want that feel of Titans again. And Outsiders, I want to see them come together in that way. Are you liking this Titans series with Deathstroke?
Yes, actually I am.
It's a villain series.
It's a villain series. It's another villain series. Completely different feel than the Six. I wouldn't want the same type of villains team. I'm curious to see where Titans is going to go, where Roy's going to go, because I want to see him. I want to see Arsenal come back a little bit to the hero that he was. But it makes me wonder how much of this is him playing, how much of this is real. What's going on behind it? Inside his head. Is what we see the truth, or is this all an act on his part?
I think what I really like about Titans and the Six, and what they've shown me, is that two different writers can handle the concept of villains and handle it just as differently as you'd handle two different hero teams. And it just goes to show that if you understand the characters and they're unique and diverse enough, and you really explore them as three-dimensional characters, they can make just as a diverse and interesting book. Those two books are nothing like each other. Right. And I like that. I'm with you in the sense, I honestly would be very disappointed if it felt like Secret Six, because I think then I would say that the writer's not even trying. But I love the fact that we've got two villain books right now that feel so vastly different from each other in the way that they're exploring the concept of what a villain is. And it is because of great writers understand great characters, and they understand that, hey, there's some storytelling opportunities to really do some things that are wacky and out there and violent and downright, they're just showing us what it's like to be a villain. And it's cool. I really like that it rounds off the universe in a unique way. Green Lantern Corps is, to me, I think, the flagship team book that's just been working since from issue 1. Green Lantern Corps has... do you consider that a team book?
What, Green Lantern Corps?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I do. But, with like any team book, there's always going to be a primary focus, and there is the primary focus, but the strength of the Green Lantern Corps title for me is the Corps itself. That's always been my strength with the Green Lantern. That's something I always liked about that character. I like the concept of the Corps. I've always had a hard time. People say, "What's your favorite Green Lantern?" My favorite is the Corps. Is all of them as one unit. Yeah, each one has these standout moments, but I always have a hard time picking one Green Lantern saying this is my favorite Green Lantern, because I like the concept of the intergalactic police force so much over a single hero being the Green Lantern.
It is funny, though. I've noticed as the last year or so, we haven't talked about team books as much as we used to. JSA, how are you liking that right now? JSA and JSA All-Stars.
I'm digging both of them. JSA All-Stars are two titles that I'm enjoying. I like seeing this diversity, where it's going, what we're going to get out of these things. It was one of those things where JSA surpassed JLA for me, and then when we added All-Stars, I'm like, oh, okay, mixing it up again. We have a very large team, the two titles, spreading it out nicely.
All-Stars
What?
All-Stars has only gotten better for me as they did their whole Magog storyline. I love the way they did it and resolved it. But when they started bringing in Sand, they brought back Atom Smasher, and they've got this new character who I just find her to be really cool. It's got a great balance of now classic JSA characters that I've always loved, with Stargirl and Power Girl and Sand and Atom Smasher, Our Man. These are great characters that I love, but then we've got some of the newer blood on this team and a brand new character, and it's a nice mix, and it feels very JSA now, where Magog's squad, initially, I liked what they were doing with this kind of attack hit squad, but I love that they swerved me, because I thought they were going in that direction and Magog was staying. I think it's even cooler that they set it up making it look that way.
And then
And then we've gotten back to a team now that feels very JSA, yet they're their own team and their own entity separate from that. They got me, though, because I was totally convinced that we were going with the whole Magog squad thing. I like this so much better, though. Bringing Sand, I loved Sand as a character, so bringing him back in, and I think they've gotten back to the core emotion of what works for JSA, that this is a family. And that this family cares about each other, and these great moments that they're having with that. Cyclone, I think, is great in it. I'm really digging her character a great deal. It's a fun series. JSA, it's interesting with it switching now. We're going to be getting a different writer on it. I was liking where it was going. I'm glad to see that we're sticking with a lot of the same core team. It looks like we're getting Jakeem back, if I'm seeing the cover image right.
Yeah, I think we're getting him back, so that's kind of neat.
Yeah, so
he's a character I don't know too much about, but I've heard enough people talk about him and talk about, hey, when are we getting him back? He's a great... I'm like, it has me more curious about him, and I want to see him in action. I'm getting to the point, especially with the JSA, it really opened me up where characters that I don't know or don't have a strong feelings for, I want to see more of them, just to, I want to expand my horizons. I want to, travel down the road not taking kind of deal for me. I don't want to just sit and just deal with the characters that I'm comfortable with. Just give me the guys that just give me the big three, or just give me, just these guys that I know. Give me something new. Give me something different. Tell a nice story with these people that I don't know, so I get to learn who they are, kind of stuff. And it's, I'm definitely seeing that stuff go on with both JSA titles, where they're taking these characters that I don't know and they're fleshing them out. They're giving you a little bit more story, one more little bit. Here's another piece of this person right within the confines of this great big massive battle, kind of stuff. Same thing with Obsidian. He's a character I want more of, because he's, again, a character I kind of knew who he was. I had a vague understanding of the guy, but now I'm just excited for more stuff on him.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was putting up a salad bar sneeze guard in case you expand your horizons over at my house. Sorry.
Here I'm thinking, wow, I got this great rant going on.
You did. I was listening to it too while I was doing that. I'm like sitting here thinking to myself, I'm like really being a putz here, because he's going off and he's on a roll, and it's great. Because you really were. I mean, I'm not taking anything away from you. That was really great. But I'm like, I can't let this Horizons thing go.
Suffering fucking cash. I get no respect.
You had Sylvester syndrome. I get that all the time. That's why it's funny to hear it with somebody else. But Obsidian is a character who I've loved since Infinity Inc. I read, the original Infinity Inc. series, and I've loved those characters, and Jade. That's why, it's funny, a lot of these characters that I think people aren't as familiar with, and that have such longevity, are like, because I really liked when Liberty Bell, Jesse Quick was Liberty Bell, because I liked All-Star Squadron a lot, with Liberty Bell being, the mother, Liberty Bell, on the team. So it was kind of cool to see, this whole nod to the history of DC Universe on that end. And those characters are iconic to me. So just seeing this all brought in and then pulling from a lot of different avenues and recognizing that their readership's very diverse. You've got people who read, your JSA-style characters. You have kids, people that grew up reading your JLA, your traditional JLA. And it's a hard lot to try to, with the diverse histories. Because when we were at those comic conventions, I went to that Sunday Conversations at New York. There were people getting up that were, like 40, 50-year readers. I'm like, whoa. I'm like, wow. 50 years reading comics. What?
You're getting close to that.
I'm not 50.
Let's think about it. You probably started reading when you were 10, right?
No, earlier than that.
Earlier than 10, so...
my memories of it are more, obviously when I was 10. But as far as actually looking at comic books, I had to have been like 5 or 6.
So you're you're over 30-year mark now.
I've got to be at like 35. It depends on what you consider reading. It's definitely, as far as reading and remembering them, a lot more of my comic memories start coming into the late 70s, early 80s. Will be my more vivid memories of the comics that I read. But I was exposed to them so much earlier than that, for the pictures and stories and things like that. So, it's been a long time. So I don't know. It all depends on what your definition of a reader is. So it's either 30 to 35 years, somewhere in that mark. And I don't know that I could actually put a mark on it. Because a lot of times their question they ask is, do you remember what your first comic is? I remember my first comics in the sense that I remember early comics that I read. I don't remember the first because I was too young to remember it. Because I wouldn't have read it like I would have read a comic at 10, which is a great example when you brought up 10 years old.
Yeah.
The comics that I was reading at 10, I would vividly remember reading them, but I don't remember what the first one was. Do you remember your first comic you ever read?
Well, it's probably not the first comic that I ever read, but the first comic I remember reading was X-Men. And it was actually a reprinting of X-Men #1. That it was some marketing thingy or something like that. It wasn't the original X-Men #1, but it was a reprinting of it, and it was this story of the team going up against Magneto. And I remember reading about these guys. Oh, this is kind of cool. And then I wanted to, that's got me into the X-Men, wanting to read X-Men stuff. And so then I jumped into what was the X titles, and that's really where I got into comics, was through the X universe.
And these weren't my first comics. I've met that Batman Hulk Treasury Edition, that huge oversized monster, was one of the first ones I remember, but it's definitely not my first. The Marvel Team Up featuring Spider-Man and Iron Fist. And I had a subscription to it, so it was not my first, because I had the subscription before that issue came out. But I remember the 2-part team up, because my subscription ended, I think, at the second part. If I had a subscription to that then, it may have been that I got that off the newsstand, because I didn't read the second part of that, but I know it wasn't my first Marvel team-up by any stretch. But I remember the story vividly because Iron Fist had the Iron Fist taken away from him from the evil Iron Fist. I've shared this on the show before. But those are my first 2 memories of comics, and I know I was reading way before those. And when I say way before, I mean years before those.
Yeah.
A couple years before those books, 3-4 years at least before those came out. I think it depends on what your term of reading is. But I guess you could consider those a lot of my starting points because I have such vivid memories. But I read a lot of the Satellite League when it was being published, because I vividly remember that team. But it's funny reading it today. Like when we did it on the show, the Satellite League, it was like reading it for the first time. So I mean, having those moments with it, it wasn't like I was clicking. I was like, oh, I remember this as a kid. It was so long ago. And it had been so long since I'd read any of it that I don't remember which issues of those I would have had or would have read, but I know I did. So that shows you where my head's at those. It's that Dark Side story with George Perez, where they did this Justice League, another JSA, JLA crossover, and Perez, finished it off, and with the New Gods. I remember tracing, and I actually will share it. There's an interview in New York Comic Con where I was talking with Arlen, and I mentioned that issue and actually had my dad photocopied the cover so I could, not photocopied the cover, gave me tracing paper so I could trace the cover. I traced it and then colored it myself. I remember doing this with it. I read that story recently, because it's been collected in those Crisis on Multiple Earths volumes. I remember elements of the story. I remember seeing Highfather. I remember Darkseid when he came back. I remember, a lot of the elements in it. But as I was reading through the story, I'm like, I remember panels. Like, I'll remember, vividly seeing those panels. But the actual story, to read it again, it means a lot more now in a lot different ways. So it's funny, kind of re-exploring some of these books from your childhood. But I don't remember my first comic. I can honestly say I definitely don't, because I was reading a lot longer than I remember. It's kind of fun, looking back and seeing all this. But it's great to see these teams and concepts being brought back in. And actually, to pull it back to my original point, I guess we're getting on a tangent. I think what we're having now is DC recognizing that their audience base from going to these conventions is very diverse, from newer, completely new readers to readers that have been reading from anywhere from 10 to 50 years. And trying to find a way to bring in a little bit of everything, and keeping the stories fresh. Like Rebirth is a great example of I think, a miniseries that really hits everybody, no matter where you were at with Hal Jordan, Kyle Rayner, Guy Gardner, any of these characters. I think Rebirth is a great example of how you bring everybody together and give them a common starting point, and feel like you're honoring the new fan, the old fan, somewhere in the middle. And I think we're seeing more trends like that. I don't think it always works, but I'm glad to see more trends where they're acknowledging that their fan base is very diverse and trying to craft stories that have that continuity feel, that feel like there's longevity, but yet have a starting point and an accessibility point for newer readers. I think it's kind of fun. And I'm glad to see the focus on team books being renewed. I think that it was always there, but I think they had so many of them in turmoil, and I think they're starting to realize that we can't have all of our teams a mess. Because how are you going to rally behind them? They were all a mess. And like I said, I'm a fan of shakeups, but there was a little bit too much of that going on for a while.
Yeah, we just need to come together right now.
Dun, 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 dun. Can we wrap up real quick, talk about Justice League?
Oh, yeah.
As I think I would be remiss if we're talking about team books, because we kind of organically led into this discussion, and we'll do it casually. But one of my favorite things about this issue 50 came out, and it's continuing what I feel is a build, and it's one of the reasons why I'm enjoying Justice League, is this team is coming together and getting stronger every issue. These battle sequences with Donna Troy and Dick Grayson, where they are training together. It's great to see two veteran heroes training on the Justice League. They're upping their game. And, you know, the two of them talk about their past history together and, you know, how this team is like what they were like when they were in the Titans, but how it gone to become something more and how they're different now. But I loved this concept of Donna Troy saying, you as the leader, I'd follow you to hell. I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
What just a great moment. And that's something, these are the two veterans, to me, right now, who are the two strong characters on this Justice League? It's Donna Troy and Dick Grayson. They are the leaders. They are the foundation of the team. Everybody else is you know, if there's a family tree to the Justice League right now, these two are at the top. And everybody else is branching off of them. They're connecting everyone together and pulling this team together. If you don't have that foundation piece, you don't have a team. And it's something that I think the Justice League has been lacking, has been a foundation. They've got it here. These are characters who you believe can lead. And both of them have been strong leaders in Teen Titans over the years. They've grown beyond that. I think we've seen Dick Grayson has been destined to be. He's been in the Justice League before they brought him in JLA. It's great to see him now, though, in this role as leader. And seeing the leadership come together. If you had this continual building and it doesn't go anywhere, then we got a problem. But this continual build of this is something that I'm really, really enjoying. Seeing them against the crime syndicate, but then seeing them pull in this stuff with Dr. Impossible and how that squad that was zapping in and doing all these things, that wasn't a throwaway. They had their own agenda that was going on, which I really liked, that these bad guys can't trust each other. You know, they make these alliances, but they are very tentative alliances. They're alliances of convenience. I'm going to use you to get to what I need here. But then ultimately, I'm going to turn around and stab you in the back because actually having you as an equal is a detriment to me. And I loved that.
That was just a great moment. What's going on here? Obviously a double cross. And I cheered, and I was like, okay, this is, once again, more storytelling. And seeing Dick recognize, wait a minute, smoke and mirrors, this is just a cover for something else. I loved seeing him go into that and go into mode saying, I got to go. And it was that same team. The team covered for him, make sure he can make his escape, make sure he can figure out what's going on. Again, really cool team dynamics playing out in the Justice League.
I love seeing these moments with Crime Syndicate where there's an acknowledgement that their history has been a little wonky and that they're aware of it. Because we've seen our own heroes be aware of changes that have happened due to these crises, where they're aware that the crisis has affected, you know, this character coming back, that character disappearing, you know, this type of thing. It was cool to see the Crime Syndicate, who's had huge changes, where even Ultraman was dead, you know, and him recognizing that I, you know, had dreams of being dead. You know, we've had a rotating cast on the Power Ring end. You know, let's not talk about what's going on with Johnny Quick. I was glad to see that acknowledgement in a way that it didn't take away from them, but also showing his motivations for saying, I don't know that I want to go back there. Because he said, I don't see the advantage. What is the advantage to us going back? Things aren't that great there. Look what we've gone through. Maybe we're better off, you know, laying claim to this place. Maybe we're better off taking this world as ours. I also loved the way that the relationship between his wife and Owlman, you know, Superwoman and Owlman was being handled. You know, she's like, well, you know, there's no sense in me hiding this from you because, you know, you got the vision and stuff. So where's modesty in this? I thought that was just brilliant. I was chuckling the whole time. I thought it was really well played, and just a great example of showing too that these are people, their moral code and their moral compass. Because he went on and like zipped her back up, and they're just going on like it was another day at the office. And I was like, this is not our Justice League.
Yeah, not by a long shot. And I remember reading some of the stuff where with the different syndicate stories where Owlman and, you know, Superwoman were kind of, you know, sneaking around and Ultraman's looking the other way, kind of, but you could tell he was fuming at Owlman for doing it. Just seeing them blatantly, open, flagrantly, I'm thinking, okay, did they change it? No, they didn't. She's still married to him. Oh, okay. Yeah, alrighty. It's the way they roll. And it was just a really cool usage of them, bringing them into this. And it's, you know, once again, this isn't the full story. This is just the beginning of what's going to happen to this team, what's going to happen between the Justice League and the Crime Syndicate. Will they have to, kind of work together because we now have this new big bad on the scene? Or the Crime Syndicate say, wow, you know what, I think we'll go back to our world. Good luck, guys. And then just, disappear and take off and leave the Justice League to dealing with this dark god going on type of stuff. It's, again, what's going to happen? Where's it going to go? I loved seeing that big picture, but also in the beginning stuff where we see Jesse Quick and Supergirl doing that race kind of stuff. And those two, their discussion where they're talking about, about whether Jesse stepped up, got called up to the majors when she left the JSA to be in JLA, but she's like, it's not a step up. The JSA is a team as well. This is just a different team I'm on now. And I thought that was a cool comparison of saying the JLA isn't a step up, it's not a step down, it's another team to be on.
But I love also her saying, with everything that happened with my dad and with his, now knowing that he is dead with what happened with the Speed Force and everything. I love that this is pulling in what happened in Flash Rebirth, what has happened in Blackest Night. Her saying, I needed a change. It's one of those things where I was on the heavy hitter team over with the JSA. And this is an opportunity for me to have a fresh start for me, but yet not to step back, to step forward. And that concept of that was great. But how the two of them both are in that same place of saying, geez, with everything that's happened recently, we both are bonding over the fact that we fought our fathers. And they're finding common ground here. This is something that I think is a strength in what Robinson's doing right now is he's pulling this team together by giving us these pairings of them. It's not just Dick Grayson and Supergirl. It's, now Supergirl and Jesse Quick pairing up. We've seen Donna Troy pairing up with Jade, but now Dick Grayson's having to analyze Jade and the stuff that's going on with her. And the fact that this darkness in her, these new powers that she's finding are things they've got to keep under control. They have got arguably one of the more powerful Green Lantern-style characters on the team now with what she's able to do. What she's doing to Power Ring in this issue, I have never seen done. She has total confidence in her ability to take him down, to drain him. The problem is, it doesn't stop.
No.
She keeps draining, and seems to unable to stop herself. I like that this story isn't done with her. It's clear that what happened with the Starheart, what happened with Obsidian, is only the tip of the iceberg with what we're going to get with these guys. And that's what I want to see. I need to see this play out. It can't be just a throwaway to that. That was literally meant to be them saying to us, hey, guys, bam, this is where our status quo is right now with these guys, but it's not over by a long shot. Her power levels to me are, remember, we've seen her powering up Green Lanterns. Her power levels are very interesting, and I'm curious to see where that goes.
Yeah, and I tell you, seeing the way she's drawn when she's doing the draining, yeah. I kind of compared it to that vampiric, just energy drain, kind of that the junkie getting that fix. There's just that look of elation kind of on her face, but there's also a little bit of darkness in it, kind of like the sick, twisted, sinister person who's getting pleasure out of somebody else's pain type of deals. And I think that, we've seen just the dark and light nature of what is the Starheart. So there's definitely corruption issues that we could face very easily. This could take it to a whole new level beyond what Parallax did to Hal if she's not careful with what she does.
I like seeing Dick and Donna, though, both taking on these roles of then leadership. And you see with Jade that clearly they're going to need to put a major watch on her, do tests and things like that, and she needs to operate on the Justice League level and be able to hold it together. And I think there's a valid reason to have her there, to have that kind of a power on your team. You'd be nuts not to have a heavy hitter like that, but you got to be able to rein her in. And I think that's going to be an interesting explanation of what it's going to take to get her to do that. To get her to be able to do that. Because Jade certainly is a hero. She's a heroic character. She's got a long, rich history. But these are new things she's going through that she's never experienced before. And you're right. There's a danger of her skirting that line because we saw Alan skirt it already. Mm-hmm. And she's attached to the same power, the same entity. So I'm really, really digging that exploration at the moment. Dick Grayson, though, going off on his own as Batman, recognizing that, wait a minute, we're being distracted here. I actually have zero issue with him not alerting the team to what he was doing. Because if he alerted the team, Owlman would have known he was coming.
Yeah.
So what he did there I thought was brilliant. It was a very Batman-like move. It shows the kind of Batman that he's become. And plus I wanted to see him versus Owlman.
Yeah, I wanted to see that fight. And we were getting a cool fight, and then they interrupted it. I'm like, dang it. I still want to see that.
I want to see round 2.
Yeah.
Because you know it's coming.
Well, because Owlman knows how to fight Bruce Wayne, but he doesn't know how to fight Dick Grayson. They have their own individual different styles to it. Owlman, isn't as good as Bruce, no way, but he can compensate. He is an intelligent, hand-to-hand combat specialist. He's going to go into this fight thinking one thing, and he's going to get hit with something else. And that's what I want to see.
I like this iconic shot of the crime syndicate where they were walking together like they were the Justice League, in that moment. Yeah. You don't see that very often with them, but it would fit that being the mirror images that, their time to let's go knuckle up and be bad. Yeah. And it was kind of reminded me of that Justice League cartoon, Justice League Unlimited, with the opening where they were like walking together in like that gold, look that they had. This reminded me very much of that, and I really liked how that was handled. I like the flip-flop between time frames, too, where we got to see this Green Lantern from the multiverse brought in, from the Tangent universe, brought in as a part of this. Did you read any of the Tangent minis? I don't remember.
Yeah, I picked up the Tangent series.
So you're aware of who she was? Yeah,
I'm aware, and I thought that was kind of neat when I saw her, because when I first saw her, I thought, like, wait a minute, no, she's not, that's Tangent, that's different. Then they explained she's from a different universe. I'm like, oh, okay, good. Yeah.
So it was a lot of fun. I'm really digging this book right now. It just seems to keep getting better. I liked that this issue was a giant-sized one, because it allowed a lot of room for a lot of action, but also a lot of character development and exploration at a time where I think it's really needed. Because I wanted to see other members of the team interacting. What do you think of Congarilla and Starman being out of this particular... I like that they weren't on the roll call. Yeah.
I like those characters. Again, it's that whole broadening my horizons. I want to see these different characters that I don't know who they are. I want to have them flesh out their stories and see how they would deal with this type of situation. I'm hoping they make an appearance in 51, that they show up kind of like the cavalry coming in.
Well, see, I think the issue is going to be, I think whatever's happening to Starman is going to be part of their next arc.
Okay.
I don't think they're going to show up in 51. I think we're going to be getting a sub-story where Starman's in trouble, and we're going to see the team come to his rescue. I'm guessing. That's my speculation. I don't know if I'm right on it. I did like the roll call at the beginning, because it reminded me of classic Justice League, because growing up, they always had the roll call of the team members at the time. And that does leave room for... I know Robinson's a fan of this, and I hope he does it, where you have the guest star. The reservist that they call up. Because I like the idea of the Justice League being this big team of all the major heroes in the DC universe. So there'd be an issue where you'd have Superman in, because it fits having Superman in. There'd be an issue where you'd have Wonder Woman in. It fits having Wonder Woman. You know what I mean? But not just them, the Atom. And characters like that, pulling them in, Aquaman. On a mission-by-mission basis, where there's these characters that, Firestorm, that could be in the book. While you have this set, solid team, there are specialists that you would have based on need. But I want to see them solidify this team and continue doing what they're doing in the direction they're going in. I like this team a great deal. I'm really enjoying this. And it goes back to a lot of what we were talking about earlier with teams, which is why I wanted to talk about this again, is one of the things that I'm liking is this renewed focus on bringing teams together, getting a strong team going. We can't be broken and in turmoil all the time. You just can't do it. This is not a team in turmoil anymore. This is a team who's got strong leadership. They've got some members that have some issues that are going on, but those issues are surrounded by people who are in a real, like Dick Grayson and Donna Troy are in a real strong place right now. Jesse Quick and Supergirl are almost there. They're not quite there, but they're almost there.
They're getting there. They're finding their path.
Jade's got a whole bunch of stuff going on.
Yeah, she got a lot of issues.
She got a lot of issues. But again, you've got this heavy hitter on your team that if you can bring this loose cannon together, wow, what a team we're going to have here. And showing her power levels is really important right now, because you got to show me, why is she here? Why does she belong? They did that in issue 50. I want to know why she's here.
And I tell you, I'm going to throw myself under the bus here for a second.
Okay.
And say that I didn't realize something.
Okay.
That if you flip issue 50 over...
That's back cover by Ethan Van Sciver?
Yeah. I didn't realize that was there, and because I was sitting there as we're talking about it, I got the issue in front of me, and I just happened to lift it to move it away from me because I figured we were almost wrapping up, and that's when I looked and I saw on the backside you got the Crime Syndicate where it says Justice League, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm an idiot. This is awesome.
And it's a good battle by Ethan Van Sciver that he's crafted there. I'll defending you on this. Second read-through is where I noticed it.
Oh, okay.
Because that's where, usually my second read-through is where I really spend a lot of time on the cover. And that's when I noticed, I'm like, wait a minute, there's more to this. So I didn't notice it. I didn't notice it on the first read-through either. The first read-through, I looked at the cover, I started getting right into the issue and into the story. And a lot of story that was there, but it wasn't until the second read-through that I'd put my comic cover inside it. And started looking at the cover, and then I started realizing, like, wait, what? Gorgeous.
Yeah.
You look good. Been working out? You could probably use a little sun. Then again, who am I to talk?
The next couple segments are going to be from the New York Comic Con. They're of mixed audio quality. We were right by the stage, and you're going to hear it in the background. So there are moments in there where we were talking really loud to try and hear each other. So if you start hearing some crackling or a little bit of audio distortion, it's really because of where we were located. But it's also kind of great, a chance to bring you right to the show floor and see what it was like to be at our booth and all that. I had a lot of fun just chatting with a variety of people, from authors that came by our table to people promoting their comic company, to friends of the show. I really wish we had even more opportunity to chat with people, because these segments are some of my favorite parts of the con, just the great chances that we had to talk to people. If you were at the con and we didn't have a chance to talk to you, no matter where you fall into any of those categories, I apologize. I just want to say that I just had such a great time chatting with as many people as we did. And if we didn't get you on the show, especially if you're promoting something, you're a creator, or you want to get on the show, please let us know, because it's clearly an oversight. We try to record with as many people as we can, and certainly don't want to offend or leave out anybody, so don't hesitate to do that. But I did want to give that real quick shout out at the beginning to the audio quality. I tried to clean up as much as I could. I tried to take out any segments where if you couldn't hear us or something like that, they were gone. So this should be a nice clean segment as far as for listening, and it's a great chance to be on the show floor. We've got another couple of these to do. It's either going to be next episode's going to be the last one from New York or the one afterwards. We're trying to do a mix of chatting about current material mixed with material from chatting with people at New York, so that we got kind of a nice balanced show. I'm here with Arlen Schumer. And Arlen, it's a pleasure to meet you. It was bad. I was just chatting, and you said I wrote the Silver Age of comics, and I'm like, wait a minute, I've got that book. I love that book. I picked it up, actually. I'm a third grade teacher. I picked it up at my school book fair, and immediately captivated me because since I was a child, I've loved comics, and the Silver Age comics were my introduction. So it was so great to see that book because it brought back my childhood, but also taught me a lot of things about the Silver Age of comics that I didn't know, because at that age, I didn't know who the creators were. I didn't know a lot of the backgrounds of the characters. And I highly recommend the book for any of our listeners who haven't had a chance to read it because of that purpose. It really just opened my eyes to things that I didn't know before about the comics industry.
Sean, that's some introduction. I don't know how I can follow that. First of all, I know that was the Scholastic Book Fair.
Yes.
But that means you have the soft cover, not the hard cover.
You're 100% correct.
Which has 16 extra pages called More Masters of the Silver Age, highlighting the artists I couldn't fit in the regular trade paperback. But fans out there that don't know the book, if they go, thank God nowadays for Amazon.com, being linked to the secondhand book sites, if you put in the Silver Age of comic book art or my name, Arlen Schumer, into your Amazon search, you'll find hardcovers and soft covers still available. So in a way, even though the book's out of print, and I'm trying to get it back in print, people can still find it nowadays thanks to the internet.
What can listeners do to help get the book back in print? Is there anything they can do to request the book or try to get it back in print for you?
Well, I'm in talks right now with one major publisher here at the convention that does a lot of comic book history books, and they're very interested. So obviously I'll follow up, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed, because I think not only should the book be in print, but to me, as a fan of comic book history my whole life, I was always cognizant of the fact that most of the history books about comics were text heavy.
Yeah.
And with miniature reproductions of the artwork, and I thought, Even though comics are both verbal and visual, it's primarily at first a visual medium. Why isn't there a coffee table art book about the actual art of the comic books and not the black and white original art? God bless it, it's great, but the actual color printed art as it was delivered and perceived to the readers. So my point is, the book should be in print because every comic book fan who's a fan of the artwork needs to really know my book because there is no other book like it.
And it's also for fans of the writing as well, because the writers who wrote for comic books wrote with the art in mind. So if you aren't putting
the
in
better
visual,
writers, yes.
Exactly. But if you aren't putting in the visual component to it, you're missing a major layer that even the writers intended as well. Those best partnerships between a writer and artist where there was an energy there.
And the bottom line is, when you talk about like who created Spider-Man, for instance, if you take the Stan Lee side that he created the verbal idea, the bottom line is the verbal idea in the comic book medium is only 50% of the equation. If Stan Lee wanted to write a prose novel called Spider-Man in 1962, he could have, but he didn't. The bottom line is Steve Ditko is the de facto co-creator of Spider-Man. Forget about the technical law that he was a work for hire. In the moral and ethical law of public opinion, based on the fact that comic book art is a verbal and a visual co-creation, period. So the bottom line is, like I said, every fan of comic book art should seek out my book. And also, I extract a lot of the original dialogue and narration in the comics from the word balloons, and I insert the artist talking about the artwork. So as you're reading the art, you're reading what the artist has to say about the very art he created. I just sort of act as curator, guiding it along.
I actually like when I get to see what an artist had to say as well, because a lot of times they teach me about a layer of the art. I'm not an artist myself. I'm a fan of it. So with not having any formal art training, to then get the artist to say, hey, this is what my intentions were, this is what I'm trying to do style-wise, it adds something more to my understanding of the medium.
But that's what the job of any historian or art historian.
Yes.
And by the way, Sean, all critics of an art form started out as fans.
Right.
You know, what we know now as rock and roll criticism has only existed the past, let's say, 40 years. It started out as fans writing reviews of the music they loved.
Right.
So my point is that you are as much of a, quote, critic, unquote, as you are a fan, because that's what a critic essentially is.
Absolutely.
And once as a fan you fall in love with the art form that turns you on, you almost by osmosis become a natural critic. And I don't mean critic just in the negative sense, I mean critical.
Right, exactly.
In both and you're able to start articulating what it is that you love that made you a fan.
Right.
And you know what? I have never lost in the lectures that I do, the articles I write, the fanness of meaning the love and the passion that I truly have for what comic books and the comic book art meant to me to turn me into the artist and graphic designer and illustrator I am.
What got you excited about comics?
The very first comics I saw were DC Comics in the early 60s. The bright colors, almost the simplicity of Superman and Batman. My brother was the Marvel fan. And Marvels, to my young eye, were too dense, were too crowded. We're too busy. I loved what I call almost the banal simplicity of those. And, you know, I grew up on the Julius Schwartz stuff, the science fiction, the superheroes, Flash, Green Lantern. But then Neil Adams came along in 67, 68. And because I already had a little history in all the great artists like Infantino, Gil Kane, Murphy Anderson that preceded Neil Adams, the impact of Neil Adams on a generation, I'm not the only one.
Right.
But so I was a total DC. That's what I grew up with in the 60s with the great, you know, like I said, I grew to appreciate Marvel as I got older, but growing up, I was a total DC fan. Kurt Swan, my first favorite artist.
Yeah.
Before, you know, there was no billing. It didn't say art by Kurt Swan. But just like Donald Duck fans talk about Carl Barks being the good Duck artist, even though he wasn't credited. Batman fans talk about Dick Sprang. He wasn't credited growing up, but you knew he was the, quote, good Batman artist. Kurt Swan was like that.
I love looking back now. It's funny you talked about Neil Adams. I had a book and record set as a kid, a Batman book and record set.
Power Records.
Absolutely. I still have it. I had no idea what I held in my hand was something that was Neil Adams' artwork.
Well,
Hey,
do you know the Neil Adams sketchbook by Vanguard?
Yes.
I did that.
Oh, wow, okay.
Now, to people out there that don't know that book, which is still in print,
Absolutely.
it's only, and I'm not saying this to be vain or conceited, it's the best sketchbook about an artist that's ever been done because, just like the Silver Age book, all the text that accompanies Neil's incredible sketches is Neil talking about the sketches, so it acts as a primer on what the art of sketching itself is all about.
Right.
So it's not just a collection of great sketches, which, yes, of course it is, but I've structured in such a way that if you read it like a book, you come away with an entire new knowledge bank about what a sketch should be about, what its purpose is, what you're trying for in a sketch, how to do a sketch, the different types of sketching. Neil Adams is one of the modern masters of drawing the human figure, period. You know, all the Silver Age artists, I believe, are like the way we look back on our Renaissance artists 500 years later, 500 years from now, I guarantee you future historians are going to be talking about Joe Kubert and Jack Kirby and Neil Adams and Jim Steranko and Steve Ditko and Infantino. The way we talk about Raphael and Michelangelo and those guys.
Yes.
Modern masters of the human figure. You know, Joe Kubert, God bless him, 75 years old, still doing incredible work.
Oh, it's
But you want to know
gorgeous.
something? God forbid, but one day Joe Kubert is going to pass from this earth.
Yeah.
And those brushstrokes, that pen line, is never going to be duplicated again in human history. Joe Kubert's line, what makes Joe Kubert, is as unique as the mark of any of the greatest artists in human history.
And the true masters only get better as time goes on. They keep perfecting themselves, and it's wonderful. One thing when you're talking about your Neil Adams book, one of the great things about having him and his writing accompany the anecdotes and pieces like that is we get a rare opportunity to connect with that artist and their work at the same time. Because that's always, I think, as fans, we want to get to know them. And
that goes for any art form.
100%
You
correct.
go through a phase when you're a fan. I was art director of Bruce Springsteen's first fan magazine in 1978. I got to meet him in 1978. I was 20 years old. Every fan goes to the period where you want that personal acknowledgement of the artist himself. Doesn't matter what medium or genre we're talking about. By the way, I was lucky enough to actually meet Bruce Springsteen and tell him to his face, Bruce, your music means more to me than anything else in the world. And guess what? Didn't say a word, didn't shake my hand, didn't thank me, didn't say a word. He hugged me like a brother.
Wow.
Silent, a hug. As Stan Lee would say, enough said.
Yeah, exactly.
On a DC Comics
And
podcast.
something you'll always remember.
I know it sounds cliche, but it was 32 years ago. I can recall it like that.
What draws you to comics? Is it now the creators as you've gotten older? Is it the characters? What is it to you that keeps you excited? Because I can tell from your enthusiasm you're still excited about the medium.
It's my life. It's my art. It taught me everything I know about art. It taught me my morals. As a DC Comics historian, I learned about right and wrong, about good and evil, the morals, those Mort Weisinger Superman stories. I'll never forget, there was a story, I think 1966, little backup story. No, the cover story, all about how Superman, the day Superman lied, or something like that.
Yeah, I know
And
exactly
the story starts out where Superman is talking to Jimmy Olsen and says something like, you know, Jimmy, I'm sick and tired of you bugging me with your signal watch, and you're a pain in the ass, and Jimmy's in tears. Superman flies away. Scene cuts to Supergirl. She's at some sort of brownie luncheon, and they make her fried chicken. Supergirl, try our fried chicken. This is the worst fried chicken in the history of fried chicken. I would flies away. The girls are in tears all day long in typical Mort Weisinger plot fashion. They're telling the bitter truth and hurting everybody in their life. What's going on? Superman is sworn to tell the truth, right? Never lies. End of the story. After 8 pages, they reunite at the end of the day at the Fortress of Solitude. It turns out they're honoring a Kryptonian holiday. Thousands of years ago on Krypton, they were subjugated by an alien race. And they were slaves until one Kryptonian named, you ready for this? Val Lore, right? Mort Weisinger, Val-OR or LOR.
Right.
He dares to stand up and speak his mind, and he tells the invaders, Kryptonians will never bow down, blah, 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 blah. And of course, they killed him. They martyred him, forcing the Kryptonians to rise up and revolt and defeat the alien race. So once a year, on the day of Valor's death, they honor his memory by telling the truth. Now, when you read this as an 8-year-old,
Right.
even though they were written for 8-year-olds, that's an adult story on an adult level. But like the great Warner Brothers cartoons, the genius of the Weisinger, Julia Schwartz, DC era is that it worked on 2 levels. But you cannot help but learn about the value of telling the truth if you read that as an 8-year-old.
The humor value, because when you tell the story at first and you think about how that story plays out, it is a lot like the classic cartoons. And then when you get to that, the deep level of that, because a lot of times when people look back at the Silver Age, they'll sit there and say, well, it was all...
There was a surface banality, but
Yes.
they were written by adults. You know, I learned how to read from DC Comics before I learned how to read in school, and I remember there was one Superman story again where he loses his powers, like every other issue of the Weisinger era, and he has to adopt a new identity. Get this, Omnipotence Man. But I remember... I didn't know the word omnipotence, didn't know it was pronounced that way, but I remember sounding it out, omnipotent, and I didn't even know how to read. But, I mean, would any kid's book nowadays use the word omnipotence? No. But back then, they wrote stories like that that made you, the youngster, read up to them. As a kid, I knew the stuff that was for children, like the Disney stuff and the children's books. My mother never read me a children's book. The first things I remember reading or trying to read were DC superhero comics by Schwartz and Weisinger. So my point is that that's unbelievable in terms of what they provided. And then you get the artistic aspect, the storytelling aspect, the beauty of the drawing, getting older, drawing from comics. Because, like I said, it taught me everything I know about art, about my vocabulary, my storytelling, everything.
And the impact that story had on you. As you're telling it, you can just hear your enthusiasm still to this day about that story. That is powerful. You talk about your favorite movies.
I remember, Sean, you know how when Marcel Proust bit into the Madeleine and ended up writing Remembrance of Things Past, I know where I was sitting in my grandmother's apartment in the Bronx. I must have been, again, 8 years old, reading a Superman annual reprinting the Death of Superman story, which was from, the distant past of 1961. And I'll never forget that final panel where Supergirl's flying in the clouds, and there's the ghostly image, penciled by Kurt Swan, inked by Stan Kay, I believe, or Shelley Moldoff, one of those, not George Klein. By the way, Kurt Swan's best inker against, I'll take on all challengers, you Murphy Anderson fans out there, but I digress. I remember tears welling up in my eyes because that Mort Weisinger sub-theme, he had so many stories dealing with the deaths of these heroes and whether they were hoaxes, imaginary stories, but it was my first probably real pseudo-encounter by proxy with death and the emotional impact on an 8-year-old to actually have the power to make me well up with tears. With the beauty of that final panel. And anybody out there listening to this, if you know the story I'm talking about, research it, you'll see what I mean. If you don't even now get choked up, then I don't know what to say. But as an 8-year-old, I still remember to this day exactly how I felt.
I remember as a kid, I was never an artist, per se. I always liked art. I loved looking at it. I liked drawing, but I was never good at it. I remember as a kid taking...
Which is, by the way, like most people.
Yeah. I remember as a kid taking... It was a JSA JLA crossover with George Perez. And it was one of his early... I didn't know who it was at the time.
That was in the 80s, yeah.
I know now. But I remember tracing the cover meticulously. Because I knew I couldn't. Could I draw it myself? No. I remember tracing it meticulously just so I could color it in afterwards myself. There's actually a moral to why I did it. The story captivated me so much because we brought in characters from other worlds. This idea and this concept that little different choices growing older in this world And this being a different version of the Flash, this being a different version of Batman, this being a god from this other world that was the root of all evil. Introducing this concept to me, that's where I started to learn about, geez, there's other ways of looking at religion and God and all of that. You know, because DC had its own religion with the new gods and all that from Kirby. Seeing this whole concept laid out before me so captivated me. I can't tell you how many times I read those issues. And it wasn't even the whole story, because it was a multi-part story, and I only had 2 of the issues.
Sean, I do a lecture on Jews and comics and show how the religious aspects of Judaism were a big force in the creation of the modern superhero and its antecedents in mythology and religion, because for Jor-El so loved the earth, he gave his only begotten son with powers and abilities far beyond those mortal men, that he might save the earth. Hello?
Yeah.
Hello?
Exactly.
In the Medici Chapel in Florence, where Michelangelo did some of his greatest works, I was there in 1979 when they had just discovered this ante-room, which is now a tourist attraction, where this little room where Michelangelo would like go to smoke a cigarette and chill out in between making those masterpieces. And there were a white plaster wall with his black crayon doodles. They look like superhero figures, cartoon doodles of superhero drawings, because when you look at the Sistine Chapel, is that not superheroes flying out of the clouds?
Absolutely.
In flowing capes and robes? Let me tell you something about Julius
Flash
Schwartz.
Girl?
Listen, he creates a copy of Plastic Man, and what does he call him? Not Rubber Man, not Stretcho, Elongated Man. I mean, that's the vocabulary. I was the only 8-year-old that knew a word in, whatever that is, 5th grade, elongated. How about Julius Schwartz as a Batman villain in 1965? Mr. Incognito. That's Latin. Incognito. Do you think any other 7-year-old, other than me, knew the word incognito? How about hoax? How about origin?
And that was the one thing that I really enjoyed about character names, where the creators had to sit there and say, how do we name this character in a way that it's something that's catchy and memorable, identifies who they are and what they're all about.
The ad industry pays what they call name labs, millions of dollars. You know the names of cars, which are these weird, bastardized animal names and things like that? Right. Those don't come out of nowhere.
No, right.
And comic book superhero names, it takes a good name.
Right.
You're branding your product.
Although, and if the name isn't memorable, the character's not going to be. It's not going to stick.
I saw Jim Shooter last week, speaking of DC history, and I went up to him at the convention last week, the New York Big Apple, whatever it was called. And I went up to him and I said, Mr. Shooter, you are responsible for the very first fan letter I wrote as an 8-year-old in 1966 to DC. Dear Editor, in those days it was Dear Editor, I hate you for killing off Ferro Lad. Jim Shooter, whatever, is 13 years old. He creates this great version of Iron Man for DC, Ferro Lad. First of all, nowadays, no superheroes ever named Lad.
Right.
I think in these days of priests and what's going on. Yeah, back then there were a lot of lads. Superheroes were known as Lad and Lightning Lass and Matter Eater Lad. But just the name, like I said, they would come up. I forget, I just lost my train of thought.
The death of Ferro Lad was a story I just read recently.
So what I'm saying is, now there's a name. Ferro is Latin for iron. Ferro Lad. But you remember names like that.
Absolutely. I read that story just recently. Recently, it's about a year ago.
He didn't have to kill off Ferro Lad.
They re-released it in a hardcover.
Yes, I have it.
And I ended up picking it up because I'm like, I've always heard of this story. I always wanted to read it. Great chance to read it in this hardcover. You talk about actually a lot of your books, how they're in hardcover editions. You're looking at coffee table book editions. I'm a big fan of seeing more comic book history books in those editions, because to me there's something that says respect. When you're holding something like that, comic book art needs to be oversized. You need to see it visually the way that the artist originally did it.
Don't leave a brother hanging. Sean,
that to me is...
The problem is, everything comes down to money.
Right.
It costs money, but as a creator of coffee table books, I'm only in it for the hardcover. The trade paperback is what I call a necessary evil, because for economic reasons. But if I don't get a hardcover deal, I will only do it for a hardcover.
Are there books that you want to do that you haven't had a chance to? And I don't know how much of that you can say,
Sean, how much time do you have left? Are you kidding me? Part of the problem these days, because of the economic downturn, is I have a bunch of coffee table art book ideas that I'm having difficulty finding a publisher for. But like I said, I seem to maybe have a breakthrough in getting at least my Silver Age book hopefully back in print. I also did a book about the Twilight Zone. And again, fans of the Twilight Zone, I'm doing the 50th anniversary of the episode Eye of the Beholder in a special screening November 11th at the Tribeca Cinema. Go to EmpireCityPro.com/tickets. EmpireCityPro.com for more information about that.
That will actually be in our show notes and on our website.
Beautiful.
As well. As you're listening to this, you don't need to write it down. You can actually just click on it.
Or email me at arlen@arlenschumer.com or go to my website, arlenschumer.com. Make sure you spell my name, ARLENSCHUMER. And I love to talk about comics and DC Comics, and that's my history and my life and my background.
I'll have all of that in the show notes as well.
Well, Sean, I'm so happy to have run into you.
Arlen, it was wonderful to talk to you, and that's really great. You know, one other question I have for you.
Yeah.
Do you have a work that you've done, a book that you put together that's your favorite? One that you're like, wow, I am really proud that came together, or it was something you're like, this is the one that, like, I finally got this. And
well, over the course of our conversation, I've touched upon my 3 published books.
Yeah.
I wish I had 13 published books.
Right.
But the 3, as a man, we can't identify with women giving birth. So I think the closest men come to is physical creation of something. And I know that my 3 books, the Neil Adams sketchbook, Visions from the Twilight Zone, the Silver Age of Comic Art, they live inside me, and giving birth to them is really the stress of it. That's the closest I came to what it's like to actually come forth to something. And I look at those books now, I'm proud of them as proxy children. To quote from Twilight Zone, just because a man dies doesn't mean you have to stop, he stops becoming a legend. A legend doesn't die just because the man does. As long as you keep talking about him, you'll continue. So that's what we do when we create, and we don't create life. Only God can create life. But we can create objects that have a life of their own as art that still educates and entertains. Hopefully, if you've hit your marks.
I'd actually love to give a recommendation for the Silver Age of comic book art myself, because it's a book that I picked up. I love it. I picked up the book, not only have I read it cover to cover, but it's one of those books that I pick up and page through periodically, just because I really enjoy the visual look and style of it. It's one that when people come over my house, they'll start paging through, which is what coffee table book. Why do we call them that? Because they're interesting for people to look at.
And they're not. And you don't have to be a comic book fan.
No.
If you're just a fan of pop culture, if you kind of like comics, I didn't do it really for the comic book fan per se.
Right.
I did it for, in a sense, an art world audience that maybe wants to know, what is it about comics that's great? Well, at least for the era of the Silver Age, there's no book I know like my book to get across what made those artists and those comics so brilliant.
You know, 3 of my friends aren't comic fans per se, huge fans of the Iron Man film. First question they asked me when they saw the book, is there an Iron Man section in there? Started paging through the book and looking at it. I mean, it was just a great example of where...
Gene Colan.
Yes. And they were looking at that, they're like, wow, this is really cool. And they started reading the article, started going through and saying, wow. And that drew them into a world that I guarantee you they wouldn't have been interested in before, but there was that little hook that made them say, wow, I'd kind of like to take a look at this book.
And when I do my lecture based on the Silver Age book, it's called Superheroes in the 60s, Comics and Counterculture. I do that. I showed where the Hollywood love affair with superheroes, all the movies they're making now are coming out of the Silver Age from 50 years ago. The stuff they're doing in comics now is still 25 years ahead of the rest of the culture. I mean, Alan Moore just finished Promethea, where he had Promethea going through the 7 levels of the Kabbalah. Hello? You think they're making a movie out of that anytime soon?
Right.
Look, they made The Watchmen 23 years after it appeared, so the greatest comics, like I said, are still years ahead of what the rest of the culture, which is only finally waking up to what we knew as kids all along, that if Hollywood took comics seriously, like we did, and treated them with respect and dignity, they're incredibly great movies.
And try to understand the product before they put it on the.
By the way, as a DC fan, the best news this week: Zack Snyder is directing Superman. High five!
Yes.
Let me tell you something. When I saw The Watchmen, and I don't care, I'll take on all critics. I think The Watchmen was brilliant.
100%.
I think that the credit sequence alone, best credit sequence in movie history.
Agreed.
But I saw that movie, and when I was done, I said, like Andy Warhol at the factory, I think there should be a Zack Snyder superhero factory film studio. Give him every superhero movie, because he understands how to get not only the real true feel of a superhero. You'll believe a man can fly when Zack Snyder does Superman.
Watchmen, they got me to buy multiple versions of that film.
But I'm telling you, I guarantee you right now, anybody listening to this, I guarantee you the Zack Snyder Superman movie will be the single greatest vision of Superman ever done on film, because Zack Snyder is the man.
All right. Arlen, I really want to thank you for stopping by. It's arlenschumer.com. That'll be in our show notes. Definitely check out everything that Arlen's doing. It's really fantastic. Your enthusiasm is just, I love that you've still got it. I love that this medium's held that.
I live it. I am it. And that's how we have to be.
Well, it was such a pleasure to talk to you.
And that's what comics taught me.
Yes, absolutely. And still does. Great.
Sean, great meeting you, man.
You as well.
Could you just once say, let's get in the car? Is that so hard?
Friend of the show, Ty Tyner. And Ty, you actually redesigned our website. Thank you personally for that first. But also, you're here to promote your comic book. And we talked about this through emails, but I'm really excited now that we can actually have this conversation. So tell our listeners the name of your comic book first and a little bit about it.
The name of the book's called Epic. It's a teen superhero story. The basic concept is it's a 15-year-old boy named Eric. He gets superpowers, pretty much all the powers you could want. He can fly, he has super strength, but he loses his powers and is cool around pretty girls. And he lives in Miami Beach, so he's, got the zaniest supervillains and the hottest chicks around, so he's in trouble.
So in other words, he can get in those high adventure situations where he's in the middle of a fight with a villain, and then all of a sudden the pretty girl comes along and there's no powers.
Yeah, no powers, yeah.
Does he start trying to find ways to overcome this, or is it a constant quest of his?
It's going to be a constant quest, but eventually, he's got a friend named Beanie who's like a super genius kind of character, and he's a young kid as well. And so he's constantly working on ways to help him out, try to get past this power situation of his.
Is this one? So you said Beanie obviously knows who he is.
Right.
Is there a full cast of his family? Do they know, or how does that work out for him?
Currently, his family doesn't know.
Okay.
They may find out later on. But basically, it's just his best friend that knows at this point in the book.
That's awesome. What was your decision in coming up with Epic? What prompted you for this? What were your influences for this series?
Well, basically, I'm the color artist on the book.
Okay.
So I didn't exactly come up with the pitch.
Okay.
Tyler James is the writer.
Mm-hmm.
He's written several other things. Tears of the Dragon. He does a book called Over, a romantic comedy. And the artist is Matt Zollman. He's a fantastic artist. And so basically, we're just coming at this. It's kind of a creator-owned thing. The three of us are partnering together. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Where can people find this?
You can find it at our website, which is www.epiccomic.com. And then you can find us at many conventions around. They're based in the Midwest and in the New York area. So I'm based in Texas. So we'll be at all these different conventions around the country.
That's awesome. How did you guys meet up?
We basically met up through the internet. I ran into Tyler at the Baltimore Comic-Con last year.
Oh, cool.
And so through that, we worked on another project together. And then when this project came up, we just ended up partnering together. He found Matt, I guess, through much the same way. And in fact, Baltimore Con last year, or this past month, when we debuted the book, was the first time the three of us had actually met face-to-face.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah. So it was basically internet collaboration.
Well, that's kind of the great things about the internet nowadays as far as bringing creators together to collaborate on a book is the fact that you don't have to be face-to-face. You can meet on the internet. You can have discussions about, hey, we're working on this project. What do you want to get involved in it? And you kind of exchange that way, which is awesome. It's probably brought a lot of creators together that previously wouldn't have had the opportunity to bring about a project together. That's great.
Yeah, totally. Skype calls and Google Wave. We were big fans of Google Wave. Apparently not many people were. It's starting to go away now. Mm-hmm. But we used it just as a creative thing where we could just throw up a sketch and we could both comment on it in real time, and a lot of back and forth comments and questions. It was great.
That's fantastic. Well, Ty, I want to thank you again for your support of us and helping us out with the wonderful website design. And I encourage all of our listeners, Ty is one of us, so please support any work that Ty's involved with and really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to, I haven't had a chance to check out the comic yet. I'm looking forward to checking it out myself and enjoying it. So,
awesome.
And the whole concept sounds fantastic. It sounds fun. I'm always looking for fun characters that make me smile. I'm a teacher myself, and we all in our jobs have stressful days, and when you hear a fun concept, it's like, oh wow, it's great heroic concept. We all want to be there. We all know that we'd have those awkward moments if we became heroes. So it's immediately a character that I know I can relate to because I know I would go through things like that if I was a hero myself. So I'm really excited to check it out.
Thanks. Yeah, the great thing about it is, it was written for adults and it's got some great humor, but we found almost immediately that the kids really respond to it, and it's all, pretty PG rated. There's no obscenity, and even though, he is attracted to women, that's why he loses his powers. It's not like a sexual-based book like some of the ones you'll see, and so it's got a great overall universal appeal.
Broad range audience,
yes.
Which is great. And that's good, too, because a lot of times, I know I've got good friends of mine who, with their sons and daughters, they go to comic conventions together, and it's great because there's projects now where they can enjoy it together.
Exactly.
Versus one where it's just for the younger kids or it's just for... That's great. So this sounds like a wonderful project, and I can't wait to check it out.
Awesome. Well, thanks, guys.
All right, thank you.
He did just thank me, right?
Indeed, he did, sir.
Weird.
There's something seriously wrong right now that you can't do this unless we're sitting in front of a mic. Okay, because you were just asked to sing New York, New York, and you were telling me, I don't know, I can't do this right now. The whole entire ride over here from the airport, you said to me, I'm going to sing New York, New York, and I know just when I'm going to do it. It was supposed to have already happened, and it hasn't. Now it's requested, and you won't do it.
Well, it's performance anxiety. I'm scared now, but
are you
start spreading the news. I'm leaving today to be a part of it. New York, Comic-Con.
My ears.
I never said I was good. I never said I was a good singer. I just sing.
You requested this? Yeah. What's your name? Okay, Steve. Very nice to meet you. Chance to do much of this, but we're here with friend of the show, Harry, and a pleasure to meet you. Harry, you learned about our show about a year ago, but obviously if you're listening to us, you're reading some DC Comics. What are you reading right now? What's grabbing you DC Comics-wise?
Well, right now, I gotta say the thing that's grabbing me is Straczynski's run on Superman. Mm-hmm. The whole, walking around and all that stuff. I'm a huge Straczynski fan, going all the way back to Babylon 5 and everything, so, whenever I see his name on a book, I'm picking it up, but I'm definitely liking it. I'm picking up Wonder Woman also.
What is it about Grounded that's grabbing you? What are you liking about Superman's walkabout right now? What is...
Well, you know what? It's a kind of a different take because normally, you pick up action comics or Superman books or whatever, and, there's a lot of, beat downs and major fights, which, of course, that's always great, but... I get the sense that Straczynski is going more into the character. You're seeing a different side of him. A side that's not always brought out. So I'm being a kid, I loved Superman as the Richard Donner movies and everything. So it's great. It's a great book.
For me, I've loved the concept that he's looking at different ways heroes can deal with the world. Yeah, they look at these big cosmic problems, these overarching problems, but he took a look and saying, hey, with how fast we're moving around, what are we missing? What kind of areas can we make a difference that maybe we haven't before? Which was an interesting, I kind of thought it was going to originally be him reconnecting with the world, but it isn't. It's really about him saying, what can we do more? What can we do different? What have we missed in looking at the bigger things that we could have maybe made a difference on individually to people's needs? And I really like that concept of what makes a hero and what can we do to make ourselves better and make more of an impact, which was his original edict anyway of what he wanted to do, to send that message.
Right, well, especially with a character like Superman who, he's so godlike and, he looks, it's like he's soaring through the sky. He looks down and everything, and it's easy to miss like the street level crime because he's busy dealing with like Brainiac or whoever, And then like you had that one issue where he's walking through and he goes to that really bad neighborhood and there's like the drug dealers are there and he couldn't like really do anything, so instead he uses his heat vision and he just sets the place on fire to burn up all the drugs, which I thought was great. I was laughing hysterically with that.
I like when he empowers people. Like you'll see some of the supporting characters in there, that are just in for that issue, but he'll say something to them to empower them, to call them to action. Right. Which to me, part of what I enjoy about comics is the way that it makes me want to be a better person or want to do something more, or it even energizes me the next day to just have a better day at work or something like that. Right. There's something positive that I get out of comics from that, and I've liked that about the run. I've liked that connection with individual people where whether they're berating him or they're a victim, he does something to try and show them that, hey, you can do this too. It isn't all about, hey, I'm Superman and I'm the only one that can do it. It's about, you can do this too. You can be super too. Which is, I think, as readers, even from childhood through to present, something we all want to believe that we can be that kind of person.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Superman is the paragon, the icon. He is the superhero. He's there to be the inspiration. All the other heroes of, the DC universe, they look up to him, they inspire to be like him. Everyone gives him his respect. Even Batman, who likes to linger in the shadow, in the shadows and everything. But totally different method. But he's gotta respect, what Superman's about.
Absolutely.
So yeah, absolutely.
You mentioned his Wonder Woman run. What is grabbing you about the Wonder Woman run right now?
Well, I mean, I've heard. Well, I know there's a lot of negative feedback so far. I hear a lot of people not quite digging it. So I was like, I was following it prior to Straczynski getting on. So I was a fan of that. I'm definitely giving it a chance to see where it's going. So far, it's interesting. Seeing how obviously something major happened, and Hippolyta's gone. Paradise Island's been destroyed. And so it's right now. There's definitely a heavy mystery to it. It's kind of what exactly happened, what's going on. So I'm very eager to see what Straczynski's got cooking.
And how does it connect to the real world, to the universe that we're used to seeing?
Yeah, because we haven't seen any other heroes, so. We don't know how that's been affected yet,
Because it's very contained so far, so we don't know how much of this is happening in real time. And that's the part I think that's the mystery right now that's grabbing me is, okay, we're seeing all these events that are so clearly outside of what we know to be true in Wonder Woman. How does it connect? And how are the heroes going to be aware of it? Is her status? Is she going to become aware before they do? Is she going to know what's going on? Because we're seeing her have these dreams where it's clear that she's got some vague subconscious memories of her past. I don't know how strong they're going to become. So it's going to be interesting to see if she discovers who she is first, or if it's people from the outside who connect with her first and say, hey, wait, what's up? What's wrong? Or are they going to be even aware that something's different with her? I'm going to be curious to see how that connection happens when it finally does in the book. I don't need it now. But I'm anxious. That's the mystery for me, the ongoing, that I'm most interested in seeing where it connects. And I think that's the one where it's either going to, people are going to love it, or they're going to hate. I think I think it's too soon to make a decision on this.
Right. I think
don't
people
see how it connects.
They're not giving it a chance. If some people, because Straczynski likes that slow build,
Right.
It's definitely, it's going gradually, but at least for me, he always pays off. Right. So I'm in it, I'm following it, and I definitely have my faith in JMS.
I was a huge fan of the previous run. So for me, it was
because you love Gail.
I do. I adore her work.
Yeah, I know.
So obviously it's like bam, we're in this new status quo. I like that he's doing this story. He's not trying to be Gale, because I'm not a fan of when other writers try to mimic somebody else or try to do it, because they're always going to come off as a watered down version of it. I am very curious to see. I think my biggest fear is I'm in the middle. My biggest fear is what other fans are. Is this going to wipe out what I know previously?
Right. Yeah.
And I don't see signs yet that that's what's going to happen, because it's so self-contained. I have hope that this is happening in an isolated bubble right now. It may change her but that doesn't mean that it negates anything that's happened to her. So it's really, for me, too soon to say. I'm enjoying the ride so far, though. With a tentative, I'm kind of in the middle. I'm very tentative. I'm enjoying everything I'm reading. I think the art's fantastic. It's a good story. I'm just curious to see how it connects. But that's true. Any mystery, I think you should be tentative on.
But yeah, I mean, if
that's part of enjoying mystery.
Exactly. If they come out and they give you all the answers at the beginning,
right,
then there's there's not enough to follow up on. You're like, okay, well, thanks for the one issue, and that's it. There's no story.
I'm not supposed to know right now.
Exactly.
And I don't. That's not a weakness to the story. That's the way the story's crafted. I'm supposed to be riding along with Wonder Woman and trying to discover what's going on. I actually like that aspect of it, that I'm where she is. Because she hasn't quite connected with her past, and we're wondering how she's going to. So I do enjoy that. I enjoy the journey aspect of connecting with her. So I'm just curious to see how it all comes together and see where it goes. It's fun.
Yeah, because I know, like, as you were saying before, a lot of people, they'll come on a new book, and they want to, like, they're either going to continue to like mimic the style of the previous writer, the creative team, but then, there's the danger of getting a watered down story or like, he's a clone or a wannabe, but then, you have the other spectrum where somebody, a new creative team will come in and they'll want to put their stamp or their mark on the character, and they'll deviate so far to be so different that it's not even a recognizable character anymore.
I'll tell you another area where it's one of the reasons why I'm so open-minded right now. Her run was bookended. And that's my favorite story arcs with authors, when they leave a book, is when they have an opportunity to wrap up what they were doing. So I'm glad that hers felt like there was a sense of closure to that, and it's not JMS trying to continue what she was doing. Her run was done. She left all the pieces in place where he has the opportunity to do this now, which I honestly, that to me is where I'm more open-minded to a new writer coming on with new ideas when that happens. When storylines and concepts, let's talk about Justice League, for example. Mm-hmm. There was something that happened in Justice League with Black Canary where she was a leader that never got to play out fully.
Right.
Where we got to see her have her redemption. That bothered me because I never got to see closure to that story. There was a story that needed to be told there that never got told. Yeah, we got to see her redemption in Birds of Prey, which I really like, but it was something that I wish we would have seen in Justice League, just to have her have that moment of pulling back together with the team. And she never got that redemption in that title. That was a great example of where that didn't work the way this is working.
Yeah, I was disappointed with Justice League because I was like, oh, cool. Black Canary's going to be the leader. I was like, okay, great. And then it was like, well, what happened?
Right.
It's like, as quick as she became leader, the whole team fell apart.
Right. I loved some of her moments as leader, though, when she confronted the Big Three.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
We got to see some great leadership opportunities from her. And Power Girl was leading the JSA at the time. She's still leading All Stars, but it was great energy to see these two characters kind of step up and really be able to show that they are just as strong as the people we normally expect to be the leaders of the DC universe.
Right.
So that was something when closure. If the previous run didn't have that, I think I would be saying what I said with Black Canary in the sense that, okay, we're in this, but where was my closure to everything I was enjoying from before? And that's, I think, a key difference.
Yeah, I definitely think that was a missed opportunity there to see like what they could have did with her in the leadership role. Are you enjoying Robinson's run on JLA?
I'm loving what Robinson's doing right now. It took a build to get to this point right now. This most recent crossover has really sold me on the team. I want to see where he goes from here. I think the issues that are coming up with, where we get to see them with the Earth 3 heroes. The Earth 3 enemies, the crime syndicate.
Right.
To seeing them finally duke off. I think that's going to be the part where we get to see them gel as the Justice League.
See, I actually dumped the book.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah, when Robinson came on and took over, I was with him for a while to say, all right, hey, let's see where he goes with this. Mm-hmm. But then I don't know, it just wasn't my JLA anymore. No offense to Dick Grayson, I love him as Batman.
Right.
Dick Grayson, and then Donna's a veteran, and she's awesome, Cyborg as well. But then you got the gorilla guy, I forgot his name. Kongorilla, yeah. You got Kongorilla. You got that other Starman guy, and then you got Jade instead of Hal or somebody. And I'm just like, It's not my JLA anymore.
I think the reason why they did that, though, and I give them a lot of credit for doing this, is they looked at those characters, the ones that you're mentioning, and said, but Hal is doing all these things in his titles.
Oh, yeah.
He's having these huge events there and really having a lot of team-ups in his own books. You're seeing what's going on with Superman, who's doing this walkabout right now. How do you pull these characters into the Justice League and say they're a team? Diana, look what's going on with her. So they said, how can we get those kind of archetypes with iconic characters mixed in with some new faces to try and, put together a nice balance of a team that feels like you've got veterans on it. And I think that's where it's working for me now. I understand completely what you're saying, because I loved Morrison's run, for example, on JLA, because it was the Magnificent Seven. They were all riding in and, saving the day. So I get that. And anytime that vibe's in there, I think what's working for me now is I'm starting to feel like this team, I'm seeing Dick Grayson, who's like this iconic character who led the Teen Titans for so many years. And I think for so long the problem was they tried to launch the Titans as the adult version of the Teen Titans, and it felt like they were stuck in the middle. They never got to that point where they should have gone to being A-listers. They've already grown to that point where they're A-list characters. So now you're seeing characters like Donna Troy, who's been around forever, since she was a little kid back in the 60s, with the original Teen Titans run. Dick Grayson, who was there. They've grown up now, and they're in that role where they're mature and they're adults and they're in those positions. And we're seeing them have an opportunity for leadership. With everything Donna Troy's gone through, for example, to see her now maturing and embracing being a hero. And she is really I didn't expect this, even more than Dick Grayson, and I'm a huge Dick Grayson fan. Donna Troy has been one in Robinson's run who has really grabbed me because of her incitement and enthusiasm at being a hero and being a part of the Justice League. She really gives you the concept that it is cool to be a member of the Justice League. This means something. It's not the same as being a member of the Teen Titans. It is your A-list team. My being here means something. I have a role here to be a leader. And she's taken that nurturing role that Wonder Woman normally has that we see in the comics. She's taken that role on with Jade, where, Jade is coming back and she's kind of caught in between. She's in that transitional phase, and you've got her acting like Wonder Woman. We've seen her act previously. So I'm starting to get the vibe that you were talking about that I got from my Justice League back in the day, with these characters finally stepping in and maturing into that role. I need to see more of that. I need to see it continue to head in that direction for them to finally be at that point where what I think you're talking about. I'm hoping that Crime Syndicate run, we start to see them come together. The most recent issue had Dick Grayson as Batman with Supergirl. And we get to see them have some real intimate conversations about their mentors, their personal lives, and kind of fitting into being a New World's Finest team because of that. But yet not ignoring who they are as individuals and what their age differences are and the difference in their experiences. And those are things that I'm getting excited about. I'm not saying you have to. I think it's an interesting book where I understand why people are saying, I really, though, want the big Magnificent Seven as my team. And I'm like, well, I can get that. If you're a fan of that Justice League and you want them there, that's what you want. So I understand. But on my end, that's what's grabbing me. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, I mean, basically what I'm getting from you is that I got off the book too early. I should have just hung in there.
It's an interesting book. I mean, if you do revisit it again, you might want to try the Crime Syndicate arc that's coming up. I mean, which hasn't been released yet even. But I think you're going to see a team maybe that has gone through the hoops that you needed them to go through, maybe. But what I'd ask you to do is, if you try out the first issue of the Crime Syndicate arc and you like it, call us. If you don't, call us and tell us why.
Well, the Crime Syndicate has always been an interesting group, so, I mean, when I heard they were coming on, they would do a whole storyline involving them, it kind of piqued my interest. I've been kind of curious as to, what's going on with them, so I may take your advice and check it out.
My understanding is that there's going to be a definitive explanation as to why, Superman isn't involved, why Hal Jordan isn't involved, where they're going to address looking at this team. So we're going to get to see the team from their perspective. So that might be, and I don't know, because it's not out yet. That might be the hook you need, though, or maybe the perspective you need to see this team a different way, and maybe it won't be. I'm very curious about that, actually. I enjoy hearing other people's perspectives, whether they're mine or not. So if you end up checking it out, I mean, you don't have to, but if you end up checking it out, let us know, because I'd be curious to follow up with you and hear your thoughts as far as, was it that what you needed, or is it still not grabbing you? Because I think it's an interesting topic. Well, I want to thank you for listening to the show and joining me today and having a chat with me about comics, because we haven't had a chance actually to talk a lot of DC. We've been doing some interviews, and when you came over, I'm like, oh, come on, let's talk some comics right now. And it's always fun to talk to a fellow fan about Straczynski's work, which I've been digging as well, and then talking about Justice League, because it's fun to get different perspectives on these particular books.
Believe me, this is actually, it's been a lot of fun. I enjoy it. I listen to you guys every week. Although I'm a little bit behind, I just finished the
How is that possible?
Well, I just finished the Gail Simone episode, the tribute. So
which was a monster.
But you guys are great. I enjoy the show.
Thank you.
Confession, I'm mostly I consider myself a Marvel reader,
Cool.
But I do have my DC titles that I pick up loyally. Superman, Green Lanterns, Legion of Superheroes, all those. I depend on you guys to fill me in on what I'm missing, So
we get a lot of listeners who say I'm a Marvel listener. I'm a Marvel reader. I'm mostly an indie reader, but I'd like to pick up a few titles, and you guys are helping me decide on what titles I want to try from DC. So I love that aspect of the show as well, and I love that we're accessible for people, whatever their favorite kinds of comics are. So I think that's really great, and I love that kind of feedback, to know that there is some value to our show for people who tend to prefer one set of heroes or one set of comics over DC. That's cool. So that's good feedback.
Yeah. I haven't gotten up to your episode on when you talk about Batman the Cult, but I'm interested to hear it. See if it sparks my interest. I might go pick it up, because based on your review and recommendation, I picked up The Long Halloween, which I'm sad to say I still haven't read yet, but I went and I picked up all of them. Well, I plan on reading it.
And do yourself a favor, if you picked up Long Halloween, just pick up Dark Victory. Because after you're done with Long Halloween, when you read it, you're going to go, I want to read more of this, and Dark Victory is more of that. So it's great. The Cult is one of my all-time favorite Batman stories. So
I know, I can tell. The way you talk about it, it's pretty obvious. Yeah,
The Cult is... So, the opportunity to be able to talk about The Cult on our show is something that I was greatly looking forward to. So I hope you do give it a shot and read it, and I hope you get that enjoyment out of it that I got. Because I think it's a great story, and a very different story from Long Halloween. Which is, I think it's one of the things I love about Batman, is that the character is capable of very diverse storytelling. And those are great examples of writers who have really taken that character in vastly different directions. And it's cool. So thank you again for chatting with us today.
Thanks a lot. It's been fun.
I'm going to need something to wear in a very big truck.
Sure. Anything else?
I'll need some guys. Not these guys, because, well, they're kind of dead.
Once again, our sponsors for this episode are DCBService.com and InStockTrades.com. Over at DCBService.com, don't forget to check out Sweet Tooth. Regularly $2.99, 40% off, only $1.79. DCBService.com remains your pre-order source. And over at InStockTrades.com, don't forget to check out Why the Last Man, the Deluxe Edition Hardcover, Volume 4, collecting issues 37 to 48. Regularly $29.99, 37% off, only $18.89. That's from InStockTrades.com. Jim, our next episode, I want to continue these explorations that we've been doing of kind of just casually talking about books, sometimes picking a couple issues and doing cover-to-covers, things like that. I want to talk Green Lantern next week, the Green Lantern universe in general, just talk the 3 Green Lantern books, the main titles. We talk a little Brightest Day. I know there's some one-shots and things. You want to talk about that Ragman?
Yeah, definitely.
One shot, and I'd like to talk about that as well. Casually we can talk about other books as well, because there's other books that are going to come out this week that we're going to want to, but I want to continue this for at least a couple more weeks of just talking about some of the current titles that we haven't had a chance to really address, because I know we're going to be going into a heavy look at Batman soon, so we should definitely touch on the green books. We haven't talked about the Green Lantern books in way too long. I think we need to discuss some green. So next week's going to be all green, or a lot of green.
We're going green. That's good for the environment and good for
I'm green happy.
Comics.
I'm very green happy.
Yeah.
So that'll be next week. And more New York. We got more New York Comic-Con stuff that I think we're going to be wrapping up next week, and then we're going to go right back to listener voicemails after that. Maybe some listener voicemails on next week's show. So we'll be enjoying that. We will see you then.
Bye.
Wait, I didn't hear that. You did what?
When I said bye this last time, I waved.
I actually heard that. I just wanted you to say it on the air. I guess I'm like, what? You're waving at who?
Nice. Thanks, pal. Appreciate it. I found myself waving this time, and I don't usually do it. And then as soon as I waved, I'm looking at my hand going, what the heck are you doing, you idiot?
Wait, you were talking to your hand?
No, I was talking to myself in my mind.
Okay. About your hand.
I was just looking and I was waving. I'm going, why am I doing this?
I don't know. You fascinate me. 229 episodes, and you still fascinate me.
I never know what you're going to do. I didn't see that coming. The fact that you returned on the recorder.
Yeah,
of course you heard what I said.
Of course, yeah. I did that on purpose too. I deliberately waited to make it seem like I was like totally into something else, and I'm like, oh, I've got to pull him on for this because this is too good to pass up. I'm like, he's waving.
Thanks, Bill. Appreciate it.
Your plan and what you do to me, Hawkman, Hawkman. Eagle eyes can't see.